We honor the champions, the 10 champions of college football on this near very best day of college football. We've got New Year's Day. We've got the national semifinals. We've got National Signing Day. We've got the college football national championship game, of course. We've got Rivalry Week highlighted by Friday and Saturday play. We've got our various cherished days in college football. This is one of them. Championship weekend, championship Saturday. So we honor and pay congratulations to all the teams that won championships on this Friday and Saturday. So that would be Texas, San Antonio, and Utah of the Conference USA and Pac-12 conferences on Friday. Congratulations, champions. Also on this Saturday, we've got Clemson winning the ACC. We've got Michigan apparently going to close it out as champions of the Big Ten, back-to-back seasons. Clemson 7 of 8 in the ACC. Kansas State, Big 12 champion. Georgia, SEC champion. Then we also have Sun Belt champion Troy. We have Toledo as the MAC champion and the American Conference champion, Green Wave of Tulane. Check out our video report we received from Steve Helwick of SB Nation on Tulane's win over UCF, and Tulane most likely heading to the Cotton Bowl. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. We have left the link in the live chat, so please join the show, call it in, and this is one of our prime shows of the year, of course, wrapping up championship weekend and looking ahead to Selection Sunday. Selection Sunday. And the drama has been squeezed out of the sport. As I mentioned to somebody that I was explaining college football to yesterday. Now, this is a friend who watches college football, knows the game of football, understands football, played football, but my friend is not like into the inner workings of college football, how it's structured. He understands it. He knows about the rankings. He knows about the selection committee. He knows all that, but he was just asking me some questions and what are they going to think about this and how are they going to view this and select this? And he basically just said, why don't we have the champions? Hasn't everybody else in American sport figured this out, that the champions should move on to the playoff? And I said, yeah, that's typically how it works. You got to win a championship to then move on and be a champion beyond that. And he said, can't we just have 8 conferences and they all either have 4 or 8 conferences and the champions move on? And I said, yeah, well, college football just doesn't make any sense. I've tried to explain it the best I can, and it doesn't make any sense. But we love it, and we enjoy it, and we argue about it, and we will have little to argue about on Selection Sunday. But we still want you to join us on Sunday. We will be live Sunday at noon Eastern time. I believe that is the time, unless it's changed. Each and every year, it's at noon Eastern time that ESPN airs the selection show. And so we will be here live with you to watch the selections and the much anticipated selections, because I think we could all fill it in, regardless of what you think. Georgia has solidified its number 1 ranking. Michigan has solidified number 2. Then we've got a bit of an argument to a certain extent because TCU lost. And there was much thought going into the weekend, if TCU lost, that it would be out. But it certainly played well and barely lost and went to overtime and lost the game 31-28 to Kansas State. So TCU appears to not only have solidified a spot in the playoff, but also to have solidified number 3 for probably 2 basic reasons. Number 1, it is a championship game appearance and a 1 extra data point over Ohio State at number 4. That would be first and foremost. So 12-1 is better than 11-1. And then the other point in all of that would be, I don't think College Football Nation wants to see Ohio State-Michigan rematch unless they earn the rematch, unless Ohio State in particular earns the rematch against Michigan in the national championship game. So for this first initial playoff, 2 versus 3 looks to be Michigan versus TCU, and then Ohio State is the 4 seed taking on Georgia as the 1 seed. before we start taking calls, the Alabama logic is this. And I just produced and posted a video. Please check it out. Nick Saban's argument, and there is an argument for Alabama. There is an argument. Is it valid? No. It has valid points to it, but in total, it's not valid. But Alabama's argument is that it has basically the two best losses in the country, both in terms of the quality of the opponent and the way in which Alabama lost. They went to Death Valley, one of the more difficult places to play in college football. They went to Neyland Stadium, one of the more difficult places to play in college football. And they took those teams, Tennessee and LSU, down to the wire, down to the final play of the game. So Alabama lost 2 games on the last play of the game. No one dominated Alabama. No one really outplayed them significantly, outplayed them measurably. They also believe that they're the favorites. Therefore, I found it amusing to hear Nick Saban actually go to Vegas as a confirmation or a backup or a valid point as to why they should be selected, because Vegas says they would be the favorites against most teams. So if we would be the favorites, we should be included, right? Now, if this was flipped around, there's no way Nick Saban. Can you imagine if Nick Saban's team was the underdog and the point or the argument was against Alabama being chosen because it's the underdog, and somebody posing the question to Nick Saban saying, well, your team probably doesn't belong in the playoff because they would be the underdogs in the playoff according to Vegas. Nick Saban would blow a gasket and say, are you kidding me? Vegas is telling us who to select for the playoff. So I found that amusing that he used that as an argument. Against Bama is, of course, 2 losses is more than 1 loss. And its wins are not as good as Ohio State's. Penn State, Notre Dame, Trump, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Texas. 3, 8, and 4 teams. And if you look at Texas's performance against Alabama, and Nick Saban argues Bryce Young being injured, and that should be taken into consideration. Coach Saban, Nick, Quinn Ewers was hurt. Hudson Card was hurt. Texas was playing with 2 injured quarterbacks, and they still outplayed you. So that has to be taken into consideration. Okay, we will get to your calls and questions right here at the Voice of College Football. Please, you're doing your Christmas shopping, right? You do a lot of that on Amazon. I guarantee, if we look at some of these call-in shows, we get 5 to 6 to 8,000 views. We appreciate that. Thank you so much for that. Half of you, according to the statistics out there, shop on Amazon, and especially during Christmas. So please grab the Amazon link in the description section of the videos. It's on all the videos. Grab the Amazon link, put it somewhere where you will remember it, where you will have it, and then you can use it to do your shopping. It's the same shopping experience, so you might as well use it. It doesn't inconvenience you in any way. It doesn't cost you anything. Let's get to it. Kicking off tonight, we got the real MVP.
Hey, Mark, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. What's going on?
Well, my team, Kentucky, didn't make the SEC championship, so I had to take that hat off and put on my SEC homer hat on, Mark. And, for the SEC homer hat, it was about as good as a weekend as you could possibly imagine. So I guess the SEC won, 3 out of the 5 power conferences, if you look at head-to-heads, with Florida beating Utah, South Carolina beating Clemson, and then obviously winning the SEC championship. Do I have that right, Mark?
So you've got Florida in the Pac-12. You've got Clemson, South Carolina in the ACC. And what was the other one?
Just the SEC.
Oh, just the SEC, of course. 3 out of the 5. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I know. It's almost like the SEC might be the best conference, Mark.
I find it. This is just fun for me, just to kind of be in the middle and then kind of play devil's advocate back and forth, because we've got our friends Tony and Tim and Rick on the USC show, and they like to poke fun at you and back and forth, and it's all in good fun. But I know that Tony likes to go to the point that Stanford is the champion at the ACC because they beat Notre Dame, who beat the 2 teams that played in the ACC championship game. But that's too many connecting points, too many transitive properties for me. I'm going to go with the direct team that won the games over the champions. So that would be Notre Dame. For me, Notre Dame won. I'm going to take Notre Dame as the winner of the ACC because they beat both the champions. But I'm good with Florida taking the title away from BYU as Pac-12 champion. And then actually Tulane would be the Big 12 champion as winner over Kansas State. Michigan actually won the Big 10, and Georgia actually won the SEC. And, you can play it your way or my way, either way. But, Michigan and Georgia clearly won their conferences. Then the other ones are certainly, we've got the transitive property. Not even a transitive property. It's just it's a win. It's a direct win over the conference champions that are kind of fun to talk about.
Yeah, and you brought up the Pac-12 guys, Mark. And did you watch the USC post-game show that they did?
I saw some of it.
Well, there was a point where one of them were mentioning that now I may be misremembering it, but basically one of them was suggesting that you underrate the Pac-12 because you think the Pac-12 as a conference is even with the ACC, the Big 12, the Big 10.
Yeah, well, I'll make this statement. Maybe I overrate the Pac-12. We'll see. We'll watch some bowl games and we'll see. Maybe I overrate the Pac-12 because sometimes when excuse me here, there we go. Maybe sometimes I got to close some windows. Maybe sometimes when a league or a team, whatever the case might be, in this case, a conference is so bad that when it improves significantly, it's human nature to either kind of think of it in the past, like it's still bad, or to overcompensate for that and say, wow, the difference is so great that maybe the Pac-12 is better than these other leagues. I will wait and see, and we'll have to estimate based on opt-outs and so forth, but we'll look at the bowl games unfortunately, we will not see a Pac-12 team play in the playoff because they didn't earn that spot. But we'll have just to wait and see. But it's funny that I have underrated the Pac-12. I believe based on some banter on there, and I believe that they do it sometimes to poke fun at us. They have had their fun with LSU being such an awful team. And certainly, I would love to see LSU go out and play in the Pac-12.
Yeah, I know. Imagine if a team that goes 3-5 in one conference beats the Pac-12 champion, Mark. I mean, what would that just say about the conference as a whole? I don't think that would be a good look personally. If you went below 500 in one thing and beat the best of another league, I think that's a pretty bad look.
Considering how much the Pac-12 has sucked for 5 years, I think I have been extremely complimentary of the Pac-12.
Yeah, I know. Have they won a bowl game yet this year?
No, they're going to work on that. We're going to get to see that. That's going to be a whole lot of fun tomorrow to see what the bowl matchups are.
Oh, yeah, we got to find one. I thought for sure last year Washington State would have beat Central Michigan, but,
They weren't able to do that.
No, they were not able to do that. I mean, those directional Michigan schools are tough for the Pac-12. Eastern Michigan beat Arizona State this year. Central Michigan beat Washington State, so...
Let's be fair here. So I'm going to serve this up to College Football Nation here. The SEC takes a hit for playing some of these directional schools and some of these weak FCS teams in November. However, do Big Ten teams and SEC teams play nearly as many Group of 5 teams in bowl games? The answer would be no.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And normally they actually have to go further down in their conferences because they have teams selected in the playoffs and the New Year's Six bowl games.
Yeah, the playoffs are obviously about quality. So the SEC has posted the most teams in the playoffs. And going back to the BCS championship game, the SEC number 1, the Big Ten number 2. And then in the New Year's Six, to your point, because of both the quality and because of the brand names and the bowls wanting to make money, games and then the New Year's Six have selected more SEC and Big Ten teams than any other conference by far, and therefore their lesser teams have to play up in seeding. Correct.
Right. So They're for the group of five. One of their teams gets selected to the Cotton Bowl this year, Mark.
Yes.
And everybody's just kind of assuming it's Tulane. Is there any chance Troy could be selected?
So, I don't know if that's just strictly up to the individual bowl to say. I know that there are parameters around it. Like they can't just say, you know what, Houston's going to make us money. And I'm just throwing that out as an example. Houston's going to make us money and they're 7-5. We want them. Much like the other bowls, there are restrictions around that. So I don't know if they have to go with highest ranked or if they can go to a second highest ranked or something like that. But of course, Tulane is going to be by far the highest ranked. They started off number 18 this week and UCF at 22. So I would think Tulane's going to jump to 14 or 15 and UCF is going to drop out of sight. So who are you thinking would be anywhere? Well, you mentioned Troy. So Troy came in with 2 losses, 11-2 now.
Yes, they are 11-2 after beating Coastal Carolina.
Yeah, they weren't ranked. I don't see that as a consideration against what Tulane's done in a better conference and then beating Kansas State, which of course their resume shoots up with Kansas State winning the Big 12.
Yeah, but I thought I would mention them because,
Sure.
being 11-2 and winning your conference is an impressive season, regardless of what conference you play in. So,
Absolutely.
Troy deserves some credit for what they've done this year, having an amazing season. Mark, let me ask you this question, okay? So, is there any chance you've said Alabama is eliminated from the playoffs? You believe?
I
But
believe.
what about Tennessee?
Well, Tennessee started the week at what number? 7?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what is helping Tennessee's cause? Georgia won, so the team that beat them down actually just continued to confirm what we already knew about them.
That is correct.
That's it. See, that was my thought about Alabama's resume, that they really wanted LSU to win since they didn't directly play Georgia, that if LSU won, then Bama could jump Ohio State because of a strengthened resume, but LSU got pounded, so Bama doesn't have that. And Tennessee, Georgia beating LSU, I don't think really does much. I don't see it.
I just think Tennessee should be part of the discussion because, they actually did beat one of the teams that's discussed head to head, and they have the same record, which, for reasons I don't understand, they are ranked behind them.
Well, they're ranked behind them because the overall resume has that bad loss on it and because Hendon Hooker got hurt.
So if somebody important gets hurt, then you should be dropped below regardless of results. So where would that put USC this week?
That's a great question. That is tremendous right there because the committee, we will see where they place USC this week because my rankings are going to come out on Sunday and I'm not going to take into consideration any injuries, but the committee, that's a great point. So there's a difference there, of course, because Hendon Hooker is out and Caleb Williams is hurt and we don't know the extent of the injury and whether he's going to play. And now since it's a bowl game, maybe he won't play. To New Year's 6, that's probably more likely that he would play versus another bowl game, but not obviously as much as a college football playoff. But since it's not determined that he's out, I doubt if they'll touch that.
Well, see, this is my issue with just the whole injury thing is it's too subjective.
Oh, yes.
Either you've got to take every injury into account, like, what was it? Kansas State, the first time they played TCU, they lost their starting quarterback and their backup quarterback. Yeah. How do we judge that?
It should be judged in some way.
Right. So, but do we judge it as we project that TCU would have lost the game? What do we put as they could have lost? Like, I don't understand the criteria for injuries, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Nobody does. They don't even understand it. And I guarantee they don't even within that room agree. Blake Corum is arguably the best running back in the country. So he's hurt. So Donovan Edwards has proven to be a capable backup, okay, against 2 good teams the last 2 weeks. But didn't Hendon Hooker get replaced by Joe Milton? Joe Milton went out and scored 59 points last week. So,
Yeah. So what does it mean? I guess it doesn't mean anything because Tennessee was ranked behind Alabama still.
yeah, I have an issue with the whole injury aspect. Let's say Hendon Hooker, let's say Tennessee qualified for the playoffs or had the resume to qualify for the playoffs, and Hendon Hooker got hurt on the last play of the Vanderbilt game. And then the committee said, we're going to drop them to number 5 because we're taking into consideration Hendon Hooker. Are you serious? Like, you're going to tell 100 players who earned a college football playoff appearance that because we speculate that you're not as good now, you're going to be left out of the playoffs? Really, we're going to tell people that earned, players that earned, and coaches that earned the playoff spot that we're estimating that you're not good enough now.
Right. And not only that, but you're estimating the value each player has on the team.
Yes. Oh, and I guarantee there are tons of injuries that are impactful across the nation that committee doesn't know anything about and they don't take into account.
That could be said for literally everybody, though.
Yeah, it's got to make headlines for them to know about it and for them to weigh it into the decision.
Right. I think that's probably the biggest gripe I have with the committee this year. Has that been a rule in years past, is the injuries?
Yeah, they've said that. That even started with the very first, with Ohio State's quarterback JT Barrett going down against Michigan, but Ohio State fortunately had one game to prove it, and they did emphatically. So if they wouldn't have had that game, they probably would have been left out.
Yeah, which is crazy to me. I just something I just will never understand, Mark. Congrats to Michigan. Congrats to Michigan, Troy, Fresno State, Georgia, and most importantly, Mark, congrats to New Mexico State because they went 6-6.
They did.
Yep. So they're going to qualify for a bowl game, Mark, and I guess USC, they can fight on against the Green Waves of Tulane.
Yeah, and as I mentioned to our guy Matt Zemek, we did a special edition of Trojans Live this morning that USC's in one of those unenviable positions where they really can't win. If they win, well, you're supposed to win. If they lose, then it's a bit embarrassing.
Yeah, kind of like Auburn lost to UCF back in the day. But anyway, Mark, that's all I got for you. Congrats if your team won the conference, big deal. And if not, well, tough loss. I know the Purdue man will probably be on here explaining to us how Purdue could have won the game. But anyway, see you next time, Mark.
Thanks to Real. Welcome into the Voice of College Football, everybody. We appreciate you being here. I will drop the link in the chat once more. We've got plenty of lines open, meaning only a couple waiting here. We got Mike coming up next. Michigan Mike, what's going on?
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing well. What's going on?
Oh, not much. We were having a big conversation about Alabama over there in the Patreon. I don't see any argument you can make for Alabama to get in other than the fact that they're Alabama. They have that calligraphy A on the side of their, because I mean, you can sit there and say, okay, yeah, their 2 losses were probably the best 2 losses in the country. However, A, they have a couple wins that very well could have easily been losses, and B, they have really no marquee hang your hat on this type of win.
No.
I mean, yeah, what?
Ole
Texas
Miss could have been that win, but they lost 3 consecutive games. Texas lost to TCU. That could have been a better win. As it turned out, they've got 3 decent wins: Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Texas. 3 decent wins. That's it.
Do you really think Mississippi State's that much of a quality win?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely, I do.
I mean,
I don't think it's a great win. It's as good or better. It's better than Ohio State's Iowa win or Michigan's Iowa win, and that's probably their 3rd best win, each of those teams.
Okay, yeah, I'll give you that one. Now, I'm on the argument, and I've said this before. I think TCU is a 3 win or lose, and I think with them losing in overtime, they're a 3.
I agree. I think it's just from a practical standpoint, even if it can be argued that Ohio State should eclipse them based on. So somebody put out on Twitter, give me a valid argument of why Ohio State should be number 3. And I clearly stated, I do not believe Ohio State should be number 3, but I'll give you a valid argument. Number 1, they've got a better win than TCU, Penn State. They arguably have a second win that's better, but certainly the number 1 win for Ohio State is better than any TCU win based on record. Point number 2 is that Ohio State lost to the number 2 team in the country. TCU lost to a 3-loss team. And point number 3 is that Ohio State was far, far more dominant against its schedule based on any metric. Points for, points against, yards per play, rushing, passing, defense, any metric you want to throw out there, Ohio State was far more dominant against its schedule and controlled its schedule far greater than TCU.
Yeah, and I think that, like I said, I personally would keep TCU at 3, but having an argument between 3 and 4. Oh, hold on. Michael Hogue wants to come on with me. Oh, this should be
okay. Before I bring him on, I'll just make this statement. If Michigan was not number 2, then I bet the committee would consider elevating Ohio State. But Michigan's number 2. They don't want to play those 2 teams in the semifinal.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is that I think, I don't think they want to have an all-conference semifinal. I think they're okay with a final.
Yeah, they shouldn't. Ohio State shouldn't. Michigan shouldn't have to turn around and play Ohio State again. Ohio State should have to earn another shot at Michigan.
I agree with that.
So, all right, we got Michael here. If you can get the
hey Mark, how you doing?
To settle down, Mike. I don't want to kick you off here, especially.
Can you hear me?
Playing in the Big Ten championship
game.
Yeah,
you got a lot of ambient noise, Mike.
Yeah, it's just the people in the background and stuff like that. First of all, hey Mike, I want to keep my cap.
You're on the voice of college football, and I'm sure that
I just moved away and stuff like that. First of all, I want to tip my cap to Mike and say congratulations on the win.
Thank you.
Now, I got one question. In my opinion, there was 3 plays tonight that changed the game for Michigan. I just want to see what you think. 2 of them was the interceptions. When right after Michigan just scored, I think, or held them, and they went down, and first play was the interception. Second one was the interception when Purdue was driving, and the third one was the start of the third quarter when Edwards had a 60-yard run. In your opinion, was that what changed the momentum, you think?
I hate that argument because now you got Ohio State fans. Well, you only won on 5 plays. It's like, come on.
If Ohio State could take away 3 plays, Ohio State beats Michigan by a couple of scores.
I mean, go ahead.
It's the entire window of the game. You can't sit there and cherry pick. Okay, if they didn't have this 85-yard run, if they didn't have this 75-yard run, they didn't have this 69-yard pass. Okay, I mean, you sit there and take out specific plays. Then, okay, who's to say that we don't, run the ball for an 85-yard drive over 7 minutes and 11 plays instead of, down and we're hitting a home run. So I hate this whole, if you take out, if you want to do that with 1 play, that's fine. But you can't sit there. If you don't have these 6 plays, if you don't have these 4 plays, if you don't have these enter random number of plays.
I see you. No, I see your point. My point is that's what swung it for Michigan, I think. Because other than that, it was a great game, in my opinion.
It was a really good game. I thought Purdue competed really hard, but you know what I think swung this game in Michigan's favor? I think it was
all the field goals.
It was the plane trip to Indianapolis. I think that's what swung that they showed up. They were there. Seriously, they showed up. Game over.
Well,
Purdue fought really hard. It was a reasonably competitive, entertaining game to watch until about 10 minutes left in the game. That you thought, at least I thought, Purdue could win this. I never gave it much of a thought that they could possibly win, but sure, they were hanging around.
Well, the one thing I liked this game was that this was Purdue is something that we had a lot of people accusing Michigan of, is that they get down in the the red zone and have to settle for field goals, which was Purdue's problem. They had to kick, 4 field goals?
5 field goals.
5 field goals, sorry.
Yeah,
And
you're fine.
that ain't going to do it.
But I'll say this, though. I disagree on the last 2. Me, personally, you had to go for it. I would have gone for it. It was like, 4th and short? Both times?
It was 4th and 4, 5?
I think it was like 4th and 2 and 4th and 3 or 4th and 4. Still, I would have had to try to go for it.
Well, the thing is, you were down 3 scores. So
No.
If you go for it and don't get it, you're down 3 scores. But if you kick the field goal,
Wasn't like a 2-score game still?
Wait, well, are you talking about the time when you were down 17 points?
No, when he was down when it was like, what was it? I think it was like 31. I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was like when it was like 12 and 13 points. I think it's like 28-16.
Michael,
I don't remember that.
This is what's going to make me feel better than anything else that could happen the rest of the night. If I know that you are drinking plenty of water for the rest of the night, I'm serious. Drink plenty of water, get your rest, and water is the best thing for that voice.
Yeah, I know. But no, I just want to get on and tell Mike, congratulations, man. They played a real good game. But hey, I will say this, though. I look forward to going to Ann Arbor next fall. All right, guys. Thanks, Mark. Have a good one.
All right, Michael, we appreciate you being here. And, your team fought hard and showed up at the Big Ten Championship game. So that's a great accomplishment.
All right. See you guys.
Thanks, Michael. So I don't know where we were past that, but sure. Anything else, Mike?
No, I just, those are my top teams. I think it's, Georgia, Michigan, TCU, and Ohio State.
Yep. A lot of people in here think, including Mark, with his comment that Ohio State is going to elevate to 3, and I just don't see it for practical reasons. And also just, I don't think they did enough, or TCU failed to do enough in going to overtime to turn that decision around.
Oh, and like I said, I did my graduate work. I got my MBA at Troy, so I'm going to give a shout out to the lesser Trojans.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the Sun Belt Conference champions with an impressive win over Coastal Carolina. Very good.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know the final score, but when I flipped it over, it was like halfway through the second, it was 30-0. I'm like, whew.
Yeah, it was a lot to a little. I forget the final score, and I usually remember all the scores. I could tell you all the other 9 scores from this weekend. For some reason, I can't remember the Troy score.
Yeah, poor Sun
anyway,
Belt.
They won by like 30. Yeah. Okay, Mike.
Okay, well, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Big Ten champion Mike, back-to-back championships. I saw a very ignorant comment on Twitter that I had to respond to, and I believe this individual is I believe they are either the owner of Barstool Sports or they are maybe the main person on the platform or whatever. They just said something about, I hope Ohio State or Michigan gets to play Ohio State, because if they win this game, then that's the end of the rivalry. The rivalry's over because we've dominated and we've won 3 straight. Unless maybe he was possibly saying that sarcastically. I don't think so. I don't know. If he was, then that's great. That's funny. Whatever. If he was saying that truly, like, Michigan's kind of ended this because they've dominated so much in these 3 games. It's only been 2, but it would be 3. Then I reminded him then this rivalry would have been done a long time ago, because I think it was like 17-2 at one point. Well, we got John on the line. John, congratulations on your Big Ten championship.
Absolutely. It was glorious. Wow. I just saw the trophy, the presentation, and Donovan Edwards, obviously classy dude, up there saying, this Blake Corum, this is for you, best running back in the country, all that good stuff. And the one thing I'll say about there's no ego on this team, and I think that's notable in today's world, that they're all there for each other, and it's just cool to see. a team. This is the first 13-0 Michigan team ever, which is pretty cool. Made history for Michigan anyway. There was something that came up. So I did a couple of shows. I did Will's thing and I did Golden Blue Dude. So shout out to the Patreon for making all that stuff happen. And
folks are out there all over now.
Everybody, join the Patreon, $5, and you can be part of all this too. Between
you and Will, and I could name a whole bunch of other guys, you guys get more FaceTime than I do.
It's a great time. But there's something that came up that I thought you might be able to take a guess at what might transpire. So if you remember, Nick Saban showed up.
Oh yeah.
In the halftime.
I posted a video on this.
You posted a video on that, and obviously I've been running around, so I didn't get a chance to see much of it. But when that happens, how does that happen? Like, does Alabama's PR team come in and make that happen? Is it somebody in the committee? I'm very curious on how Alabama's head coach gets this FaceTime. Didn't really see anybody else get this FaceTime. At least, I might have missed it, but.
So understand a few points. One would be that he is obviously, take away the name Nick Saban in the school Alabama. They are the talking point. They are the team on the border. It failed. It ended being Ohio State after USC lost. They're considered in, and Alabama is the team on the line. So they're the most logical choice to talk to the coach that it's the most controversial selection. That's number one. Number two is Nick Saban, and it's Alabama.
Right.
So on top of that, so I am about 90% sure, based on working in control rooms and seeing these communications being made and these overtures, that the network reached out to Alabama and Nick Saban.
Okay.
Most likely. I can't guarantee that, of course, because certainly I'm sure Fox Sports, if they got a call from Nick Saban in Alabama, they'd be like, heck yeah, we'll get you on here, because it's compelling, as opposed to just showing highlights from the other games and going through the goal. Let's look at the resumes. Boom. They're going to draw more people in. I turned it up and listened to it, as opposed to just there's highlights and those guys are talking about what happened in the first half. I typically don't listen to any of that.
Yeah, we definitely had some disagreement in the different things of, like, some people thinking it would be TCU, some people thinking it would be Bama due to the brand and the money and ratings and all of that. And then me, I'm somewhere in between. I'm like, I think TCU should get in based on all the metrics, based on the resumes, based on what I've seen so far. But there's this piece of me that is more of the capitalist, the business side, where I know how these things work sometimes. And is there a realm where we wake up tomorrow? I think it's tomorrow. It's usually the day after at noon, or around that.
We'll be here live. Yes, tomorrow
in Alabama. Yep. We're going to be here. Okay.
Yes.
So everybody tune in. And then what happens if is there going to be could Alabama actually get the 4 spot?
They could. Yeah. Sure. They could get the 4 spot. So what you say about the Alabama brand and the money connected to the TV ratings makes sense, and that's what everyone believes. However, if you go through the college football playoffs and look at the TV ratings, and specifically last year, the Alabama-Cincinnati game was not highly watched. Now, we could blame Cincinnati and the obvious yawn factor of people thinking Alabama's just going to roll and it's not going to be much of a game. And they didn't beat them embarrassingly, but they had control of the game, and it
was very much a mercy.
Yeah, just kind of like, let's get up by a couple scores and just get out of here and don't get hurt. And the Alabama-Georgia game didn't do exceedingly well either. It did okay. Ironically, the Rose Bowl did as well as the 2 semifinal games.
Because it was interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. And
like the actual game itself, not the ramifications, but the game itself was a good game.
I think it did well for 3 reasons. Ohio State was there. It's the Rose Bowl. The Rose Bowl always outdraws every other bowl game. And number 3, it kept the audience because it was a great game. So people make this comment about the brand being selected because that started with the first year in Ohio State against TCU and Baylor. But I do think that there were valid and obvious reasons why Ohio State was selected and the other 2 were not. And now we've seen that happen a few other times. So Bama has a weaker list of wins than they typically do. Now they're usually 11-1 right now and not 10-2. So convert one of those losses into a win, whether it be at Tennessee or at LSU, and suddenly they've got that check win like Ohio State has against Penn State, because their 3 wins are Texas, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and they're decent wins, but they don't have like a win to go to. And Nick Saban didn't even go to that point. He went to the point of losses. Their best argument are the losses, not the wins, that nobody beat us until the last play of the game. We played at 2 very difficult places to play. And of course, Nick Saban used the rankings that were the rankings then, not the rankings now. He used Ole Miss's rankings as a top 10 team then. They're not nearly a top 10 team now. So he said, we played 3 top 10 teams. Well, 2 of them are no longer top 10 teams. And the top 5 team that he mentioned is no longer a top 5 team.
Yeah, and then we forget that Texas was very, very close. And if Quinn Ewers stays in the whole game, Texas probably wins the game.
Yes. So 2 really good points you bring up there about the Texas game. Nick Saban used the injury argument about Bryce Young. Okay, Nick, you play Texas. You won by a thread last play of the game. No Quinn Ewers. And even if the committee's doing its homework, Hudson Card was playing on one leg in that game. He was playing with a sprained ankle. He was nowhere nearly effective. So they need to take that into consideration. And then the other point that you bring up about Texas is, we've got a common opponent to compare. And TCU was much more impressive. I know the final score was only 17-10, but it was 17-3 until late. They really shut down Texas. They had a much more impressive win at night in Austin.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if I had to put money on it, I would probably say TCU. But I wouldn't be completely floored, flabbergasted, shocked to hear Alabama. So the other game that I thought was really interesting was the end of the TCU Kansas State game, where the final play call, I think, has been talked about a lot in terms of, if you're going to go under center, you have a quarterback that's basically been willing you back into the game, almost single-handedly willing you back into the game, and you don't give it to him. That one kind of puzzled me, because he was the reason they were back in and at least had a chance in overtime with Duggan.
They had 2 plays at the goal line that I cannot say, based on review, that they got ripped off. But had it been called the other way, I could also not say that those were incorrect calls. They had to play with Duggan reaching for the goal line, and I don't know that he didn't meet the plane of the goal line before his elbow hit. It was extremely close.
Yeah.
The issue I had with that, not that they called it short, but if it was short, it was short by that much. And they still put the ball back at the 3/4 yard line. The ball was still sitting back here. That makes a difference when you're trying to shove a body across the goal line with 11 guys coming against it. Then the other one was the Kendre Miller carry into the end zone, and he's just kind of laying, and they had the shot from up top, and you don't know if he's touching ground or not. You just don't know. And he reached, and the ball was knocked out of his hand, and he got it back, and he did have the ball, I believe, touching the plane, but he might have been down. Who knows? So, but you had an issue with the play calling and them not going to their best player. Yeah.
And or kick the field goal. Like, because at the end of the day, like, at least with kicking a field goal, you're still hypothetically in it. Your defense can maybe stop Kansas State from getting anything more than 3. Whereas if you're going to do that and you don't get it, you're done. You're probably done, because they can kick a field goal. Sure. You know, so I don't know. That was kind of head scratching for me. But anyway, I'm going to let you go to other callers. Just want to say to everybody, if you are not in the Patreon, so the Patreon is a great time. We have been having watch parties a lot of the last day, basically. We've been watching the games and talking about them on StreamYard, and it's been great. You can join in on that if you join the Patreon. We'll probably be doing them for the playoffs too, and I know that Todd Guy's doing one for Army Navy. So there'll be watch parties for that. So it's $5. You can we'll drop the link in the chat, so you can literally just click it and sign up, and you can be part of the chat and be part of the betting guides. There's a lot of good stuff that we do, and really helps support the channel and keeps all the content coming.
John, before we let you go, unless there's anything else you want to bring up, I just want to say thank you so much for everything that you do here. You support this channel in just tremendous ways, and probably ways that I don't even recognize, because you're out there promoting and all that. And I just appreciate all the kind things that you have to say in the chat, and you continue to remind people how they can support the channel. So thank you so much for that. I hope you know that you're greatly appreciated here.
Thanks a lot, Mark. Have a great one.
Thanks, John.
Bye.
As John notes right there, you can join us on Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV. You can just grab the link that I just dropped in the live chat, and I will do that again, because as soon as I dropped it there, of course, 50 people made comments and it's long gone. So we will continue to drop the link in the chat. So thank you so much, everyone, for that. I will also get the link to call into the show back in the chat as well. We've got Chris on the line. Chris, how you doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
I am doing just fine. What's going on?
Well, you actually kind of talked about the part I was going to bring up, which is the last possession, I guess, that Texas Christian had before they lost possession, I guess, on that. There's a couple questions, I guess, I have about it, Mark. I don't know. I'm not real clear on the rules, I guess. I don't know. My initial impression without the review was that Duggan, I thought he crossed the goal line, but then, of course, when you freeze frame it or whatever they do, then, of course, it looks like, well, no, he didn't quite get in or whatever. But then it looked like, even without him being in, it looked like it was almost there right on the line. How far over does it have to be before it's a touchdown? I don't know that I understand.
The nose of the ball just has to touch the front of the plane.
Well, and I don't know that it was that clear that he didn't do that, but maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know, but.
Well, the issue in those situations is that they called it short on the field, so they have to have overwhelming evidence, conclusive evidence that the call on the field was wrong for them to overturn it.
Well, the other thing was Texas Christian had to call a timeout before they would even look at it, and I kind of thought that was a little strange, because not that I don't know that really changes anything, but I would think that on a possession call or whatever you want to call that, maybe it's not automatic, but it's almost like, I don't want to say the officiating decided the outcome. I'm not one of those people that really believes into that, really, but I don't know that was a bad call. I think had I reviewed it, I probably would have said he was short too, in all fairness. But then the play after that, and then they had to call a timeout, which I don't know if that really matters, but then the play after that, it looked like to me that he got stopped, but they never blew the whistle. And then it looked like he stretched his arm over, and it looked like it crossed the line. Now, again, I think a proper ruling would have been maybe a whistle as soon as he lost his momentum or whatever, and so maybe he was short. But then if they didn't blow the whistle, and then they said the angle was kind of from a reverse angle, I guess, but just from the angle, it looked like he, if they hadn't blown the whistle, and then he dropped it, he fumbled it. So there's like any number of things could have happened on that play that could have gone either way. And I mean, I'm okay, I guess, even with that one, because I don't really think he did score until he reached his arm across it. But and then of course the last play was there. I don't know that a keeper necessarily would have been the right play either, but of course on the last play they ran, he just got stopped. Kansas State stopped the play. I really don't think it would have mattered what they would have done on that one, really. So I don't want to take anything from Kansas State, but I just was a little surprised that they didn't really take much time to review either play. I don't know if you felt the same way.
Well, they did review the play that he reached out for the goal line, the first one. I don't remember if they had an official review on the second play by the running back.
Well, I don't think they scored on either one, but it was a little surprising to me that the way they kind of made the decision to me was didn't seem like it was, I don't like it when they stop the game for 10 minutes either. Don't get me wrong. I'd almost rather that they stick with the play unless there's, I don't know that he scored on either play, but, on a game that maybe might determine who goes to the playoffs, I don't know. I was a little disappointed, but I don't think Kansas State didn't win it. I think they did win it, but I just was a little surprised they didn't take more time to review it. That's all. Yeah.
To John's point, who just called, you would think that TCU, so it seems as though most of these coaches, when the ball is placed extremely close to the goal line, they're just going to try to shove it ahead, a quarterback sneak. You now have the rule in place where you can push the player, the ball carrier with the ball. You can push him from behind like you couldn't before. But if it's a yard or two away, then they're thinking typically that this is too far for us to sneak it. And you would have thought in 4 downs that there would have been at least one play when they would have run some kind of play action and rolled their quarterback to the outside where he had an option to run or throw.
Well, I mean, I kind of agree, but it's always easy. I think it's a lot easier to second guess. If they'd have scored on that play, we'd be telling everybody what a wonderful play call it was. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not know that I really buy into that really, but I just think Kansas State, they stopped the play, in such a way that you couldn't really dispute that one. There was one more play I just want to ask you about, and I don't remember. I think Kansas State was ahead by at least 8, maybe even more. I don't remember, but Duggan got away from. I think what it was is on a rollout, and then they almost had him, and then he got away from it and got almost scored a touchdown, really. Yeah. And they called that one back because then they said it was holding, and it looked like maybe the guy kind of just barely grabbed the guy's jersey. I mean, I don't know. That one made me kind of mad. I mean, it was I guess if you want to call a little, I mean, it didn't really impact the play at all. I didn't like that play call because, I mean, yeah, I guess maybe as far as the rules go, maybe it was, but it didn't look like he didn't impede the player by doing what he did. And it just seemed like it was a total momentum killer. I think it took 10 yards. I think Texas Christian still, there was
they overcame that anyway.
Well, yeah, but he almost scored though. Duggan almost scored. He got to the 6-yard line, and even then he, and so instead of being from the 6.
But that didn't impact the drive. They still scored. If it's the same play that I'm thinking about, that put them back to first and 25.
Sure, it's the same play. It was 3rd and 20 instead of 1st and goal from the 6. I mean,
and they still scored.
Well,
if it's the play I'm thinking of, they still scored on that drive.
Well, I don't know, Mark. I mean, I think that was a momentum killer, and I didn't agree with it because it
wasn't a momentum killer if they still scored on that drive.
Well, I disagree with you on that. I think when you have a play that gets almost in the end zone and they call it back, I think that it's like sucking the life out of you. I don't know that play didn't change the momentum, but I could be wrong.
Still scored.
Well, that's like saying just because they scored, it didn't matter, but whatever.
It didn't matter.
I think
you followed the game of baseball.
About it.
Do you understand the rules of baseball?
Not really.
Okay, well, I'm going to state this anyway. If a batter hits a foul ball, hits a home run that's foul by an inch, and there's a dispute as to whether it was a home run or not, and none of us can agree because some of us saw it one way, others saw it another way, and it's ruled that it was not a home run, it was foul.
Okay.
And on the very next pitch, he hits a home run. So the result of the at-bat is still a home run. Then the previous play did not matter.
Well, like I said, all I know is it went from being first and goal from the 6-yard line to 3rd and 20 from the 40.
And they still converted the 3rd and whatever from the 40.
Well, they did, but I mean, I don't know. I mean,
so it didn't matter.
Well,
I'm not discounting your complaint about the call on the field. I'm just saying that the result of that didn't matter because they overcame it.
Well, the player that they called it against was saying, "Oh yeah, it's on me." Like he said, "Look, look." He didn't think he did anything wrong. He says, "Well, because they tell
nobody ever thinks they did anything wrong on a football field."
Well, holding means grabbing a guy's jersey for 1/10 of a second, I guess. That's pretty much all he did. I mean,
so the officials are not. I like you, Chris. When I see a penalty against a player or in a situation where it did not impact the play, it's on the other side of the field, didn't come close to the ball carrier. I don't like that because I don't like officiating calls to impact the game. But the referees are employed and their role is just to call the game and not try to figure out, is this impacting the play or not impacting the play?
Sure. There's no way to review something like that?
No.
I mean, that was kind of the question I had.
It's not within the rules.
I kind of know what holding is, but I think you have to impede the player from making a play.
Yeah,
didn't look to me like he impeded him at all.
That's a subjective call. So that's not within the rules to review.
Well, it didn't look like a penalty to me, but I don't know that I understand the rule well enough to make the say of it. But, it took a good play away from Texas Christian. That's all I know about it. He really made a good play on it. I mean, he probably should have scored. I think the only reason he didn't was there was a guy, I guess, that was able to kind of trip him up at the 6. Even then he almost made it in. Let's
move on from this portion of the conversation because the result is it didn't matter.
Well, anyway, all right. The other thing I was going to tell you, and I think I already kind of talked about it, was because it was an overtime win for Kansas State. So Texas Christian already had an overtime win. So what it basically does is if you add those two together, this is how I do it. I don't know if it won't matter to you probably, but that gives Texas Christian a regulation loss. You add those two together, the overtime win and the overtime, that means that Texas Christian's record's now 12-1. So that they are 12-1 now. Overtime is a little bit different. That's what I mean. They had an overtime win against Oklahoma State, and now they have an overtime loss against Kansas State. So the record becomes 12-1.
So basically, you count ties at the end of regulation as half win, half loss.
Roughly, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, not exactly, but that's close enough to where, it's pretty close. So what it does is it makes Texas Christian 12-1. That's what I know that's what their record is anyway, but the overtime it makes it to where it's a 12-1 official regulation. They're 12-1 now.
Yeah. In regulation. So your system doesn't take into account anything that happens in overtime.
Oh no, it takes into account, but my point is, if you hadn't had that overtime loss or whatever, the overtime if they how do I want to put it? I'm not real good at explaining things. I apologize, Mark, but they had an overtime win against Oklahoma State, and then they have an overtime loss against Kansas State. The overtime kind of works itself out to where now it's as if they had 12 wins and 1 loss. It's the same as if they went 12-1. Yeah. Which I know is what they are anyway, but I just want to be clear on that. So people don't want to know, but they're 12-1 now is what they are.
They are.
Okay.
They were 12-0. Now they're 12-1.
Well, I understand that, but because of overtime, that it's a little confusing, but they're as if they lost 1 game now.
All right, Chris, anything else?
No.
Okay. Well, have a good night.
You too.
Thanks for calling.
Bye.
All right. So let's hit these super chats. Then we will get to our next caller. We've got Diamond Boy. Bama lost to teams that got dominated by local high school teams. Well, this is something that I wasn't aware of, that there were local high school teams playing LSU and Tennessee. Maybe those are like Thursday night games. So those are kind of cool. I wish we had like tape on that, or I would think maybe ESPN and Fox would get out there and broadcast some of those games. So apparently Tennessee and LSU are playing local high school teams. Interesting. All right. So then we've got Devin says Ohio State lost to Michigan by 18, 22 actually. Could Alabama jump them? No, they could not jump them because neither team played. So the committee is already determined that Ohio State's ahead of Michigan or ahead of Alabama. Why would Alabama jump Ohio State, having not played and Ohio State didn't play? Neither team's evaluation changes at all, except for evaluating the teams that they played. Now, to your point, had LSU played a great game against Georgia or even won that game against Georgia, the argument could be made that Alabama's resume was boosted in such a way to lift it past Ohio State, but that did not happen. Michigan won its game comfortably. Georgia won its game comfortably. It's all null and void. Those are the only two teams in play that are connected to Ohio State and Alabama. So nothing there. And then we've got a super chat that just came in. We appreciate it so much. Thank you for that, Devin. Let me make it here. We've got DeAndre, BGPO Football Funk. We will post it here in just a second. He wants to call in. Okay, so if somebody can do that, or I will get to it in just a second. We've got Greg on the line. Thank you so much for the super chat contribution as well, Greg. They should move the Ohio State-Michigan season game to October to prevent back-to-back replay, especially after Big Ten eliminates conferences. Well, they may or may not address that. I don't want to see Ohio State and Michigan play in October, but I also understand the issue with the potential and with the way the conference is currently structured, with the way the conference is currently configured. And I'm talking about the balance of power within the conference, seeing these two teams as they would have the last two seasons. Now that Michigan is finally playing like Michigan, because for the longest time, Ohio State wouldn't have had a rematch with Michigan because Michigan was completely in the abyss from 2005, basically, aside from 06. They were pretty good in 07. They got back to being pretty good in 15, but for most of the last 20 years, that would not have been a rematch because Ohio State was winning championships and they had various teams that jumped up and challenged them, like Michigan State, like Wisconsin, like Penn State, but rarely Michigan. But now it's Michigan. So if the balance of power stays the same in the Big Ten, do keep in mind that USC and UCLA are coming in 24. Yes, that's an issue because either you take the sanctity and the sacredness of this game, the game, and you move it off the final weekend of the season to October, wherever in the season. And then you've got a rematch in the conference championship game, potentially. I think USC is going to have something to say about that in the future. But they will play in the conference championship game, 2 out of 5 years, 3 out of 5 years, whatever it turns out to be going forward. And that's an issue. If two teams are that dominant in the conference, because the way the other conferences have played out and currently are configured, it doesn't appear as though we will have that kind of issue in the other conferences, although Alabama and Georgia are there. And let's see, this season we would have had, now, of course, the schedules will be different, but the way it played out this particular season, if in the SEC there were no divisions, then we would have seen a Georgia-Tennessee rematch. In the ACC, we would have seen Clemson and North Carolina. That would have been the ACC championship game with no divisions. However, North Carolina with no divisions would have had a tougher schedule. So we don't know what would have happened there. But the way the schedules are this season, it would have been Clemson, North Carolina. It would have been Ohio State, Michigan with no divisions. It would have been Georgia, Tennessee. It would have been, well, the Big 12. They've got it right. They got the two best teams. And of course, the way they changed it this summer in the Pac-12 for the 22 season was to disband the divisions and go with the top two teams. So that became USC and Utah. Although with the balance at the top of the Pac-12, really nobody would have had an issue, I don't think, with any of those teams being selected because they all beat one another in different ways. All right. We will get to the phone lines here in just a second. We've got other super chats coming in. We want to make sure we get all of these. And please, if I miss your super chat, please let me know. Just write to me in bold, in caps, because I try to hit all of them and I may miss something here and there. Matthew states, Michigan fan here. I think the committee keeps TCU at 3 and puts Ohio State 4. Would an Ohio State Michigan Natty game be the biggest rivalry game ever played? Yes. It would have the most at stake. Absolutely. It's the national championship. Yes. That's an easy answer. I can't even put any other kind of spin on it. Now, to a particular person out there, a particular Ohio State or Michigan fan, there could be other games because of sentimental reasons they carry more weight, but looking at it logically, looking at it unbiasedly, yes, that would be the biggest game because it is for the outright national championship. Now, for me personally, there have been other Ohio State-Michigan games that would mean more to me in my past than them playing for a national championship this season. But again, that's tied to personal reasons. Nothing to do with the actual, yes, that's just an obvious answer. WS989, I may have missed, so forgive me, but who is your 3? Okay. This is very easy. Georgia 1, Michigan 2, TCU 3, Ohio State 4. I can make a case for Ohio State at 3, but it's only a case. I do not believe it's entirely valid, or I believe there are valid points, but TCU is the 3 over Ohio State is the 4. I believe that based on resume. I believe that based on playing an extra game. But if I was from the outside and not involved in any way from a fan standpoint, I would feel the same way and I would believe the same way. Not when I say feel, I mean believe, I mean think it through, that I can see the argument. I have made the argument. I did a few minutes ago for Ohio State to be the 3, but I believe TCU has earned the 3 and Alabama should be the 5 and they should be out. But they do have an argument. It's not a very good argument, and it's got more points against it than points for it. All right, we've got Nelly college football game. I don't like a rematch of the game, but I don't like the idea of TCU staying number 3 even more. Good luck, committee members. Well, I think they're off the hook this year for all the chaos that we talked about and considered and situations that we played out. The committee's off the hook. It's clear cut. It's right there. Now, if Alabama had not lost one of those 2 games, then they would be fighting between Alabama and Ohio State and TCU. Or if Tennessee had not lost one of its 2 games. Or if LSU wouldn't have lost last week and would have beaten Georgia this week, then we'd have a problem. But we don't. It's clear. It's clear cut, just like it was pretty much last year. The 2 years that have been the easiest for the committee, 2019 and 2021. And now 2022. For as much as that hurts me, because I would love to have controversy. Janet, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Janet, it's great to have you here. Thanks for being here. We hope that you'll be here all the time. We're talking college football here all the time. And don't forget that when I'm not here live, I'm probably live on one of our team channels. We've got Nebraska and USC shows on Monday night. We've got an Iowa show on Tuesday night. We've got Oklahoma, Ohio State, Michigan, Florida State, and Miami on Wednesday. We've got Miami on Thursday. We've got West Virginia on Friday. And with everything going on, meaning I had a few people that wanted to get together tomorrow, and I said, tomorrow is one of the busiest days in college football all year. The rankings come out, the playoff selections, all the bowl invitations, and probably some coaches are going to get fired and hired. Dan, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you being here. Dan, thank you so much for the contribution. Back from the abyss, Mark. Go Blue. Great show. Thank you. Conference championship games should help a team get into the Final Four, but not reject anyone. Don't reward a team sitting at home and not playing. I understand your point. I agree with your point, unless that team, in fact, has a resume that is better than the teams that played. Consider this. This would have been funny. Now, for you people who love college football and you're all here, this doesn't mean a whole lot to you because you know what the setup is and you know how all this was going to play out today and what it looked like going into today. But it hit me today when I thought we could have a situation where all 5 conference champions don't go to the playoff. If LSU would have won and Purdue would have won, we would have had all non-champions go to the playoff. We would have had Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, and Georgia in the playoff. How crazy is that? That, I guarantee, that is a first where nobody in the Power 5 needed to win to get in. As it turns out, Michigan and Georgia certainly didn't need it. And as it turned out, TCU did not need it. USC did, but they didn't get it done. So we could have had 5 conference champions miss the playoffs. That is crazy. All right, Roger, thank you so much for being here. Mark, 20 million viewers on the Ohio State-Michigan rematch? Heck yeah, I would think so, although there's only so many college football fans or potential fans out there, meaning that 17 million watched the initial game, and obviously these are with higher stakes, except for us purists who say the actual game that's scheduled during the season is more important. It's the game. I don't know what this is called. This is just going to be a playoff game if they play. But consider that the Rose Bowl and the national semifinal games last year did right around 17 million views, something like that. So it can only go so much higher because most of those people that were watching Ohio State, Michigan, and the people that watched the college football playoff, you know, there's only so much. So when Ohio State and Michigan were playing at noon, there were obviously other games going on. I forgot to watch or look at those ratings, those TV ratings, but obviously they were minuscule compared to Ohio State and Michigan. So that audience is only so large for college football, if you get where I'm headed here. All right, Taylor, thank you so much for the contribution. We appreciate that. Rooting for a Michigan Ohio State natty, so maybe the Big Ten will finally get some respect this year. Also love the channel as a Michigan fan. Well, thank you so much for that. I'm going to release some results at the end of the year. I would love to be able to have an accounting department that could go through and sort through all the teams that we post videos on to give some kind of metrics as to the most popular teams and videos on the main channel. But we can obviously do that on the team channels because I've got some rather loud Miami fans on the Miami channel that just assume that their videos on the Miami channel are the most popular, and that's the most popular channel. I appreciate the Miami channel, and I appreciate all our Miami fans on the Miami channel because they've done so much to help us here and support us, but that's not the case. So Michigan, I believe, represents our largest fan base. I do believe that. We've got Stan here. Mark, how do you see the rankings and matchups between the semifinal teams? Again, I believe they are going to be what I would select. I think myself and the committee are going to match, and it pains me to say that because I don't believe we should have a committee. Georgia 1, Michigan 2, TCU 3, Ohio State 4. Ohio State and Georgia. Ohio State is going to have to get a lot better between now and December 31st to beat Georgia. If they played tomorrow, Georgia wins. Georgia beats them, 45-24. And that's not to say Michigan's as good as Georgia, just because the scores are similar. But Ohio State has the capability to beat Georgia. I actually think in some ways Ohio State's best equipped to beat Georgia, but they better play better and need to figure out their running back room, whether Dallin Hayden is capable and trusted to play in a big game and get carries or not. And then the other game, TCU and Michigan. Watching that TCU team today, especially when they were really humming on offense, I thought, man, Michigan better watch out what they're asking for here. I would say Michigan would beat TCU. Again, don't take this to the bank because I will have a final prediction at some point that Michigan's going to win this game over TCU in a very hard-fought game. I don't know, 34-27. All right. Any other super chats before I take this call? That should do it, I believe. Let's bring in, got John on the line. Hey, John.
How you doing, Mark?
I'm good. How are you?
All right, so I'm all right. So I am a Buckeyes fan. My good buddy of mine, he's a big Michigan fan. He said something earlier that kind of surprised me because he's a big Ohio State hater. As he said, I'll say one thing: if Ohio State gets in, whoever they play in that first round better watch out because Ohio State's going to come in angry, and they're going to try to push around anyone they can. And he brought up when Ohio State got in over TCU about how Ohio State beat Alabama and Oregon. And he thinks that they would use fuel for that fire and make them more deadly to make the playoff run for the championship. And also, I just wanted to ask, he brought up something to me. Do you happen to think, if it's true, he said that the ESPN owns a portion of the SEC? And he was asking me if I think that has anything to do with how it's never a problem to have two SEC schools in the playoff, but it's a problem. It always seems like it's an issue that they try to avoid having two Big Ten schools in the playoff.
Well, the first thing I would say would be that for your first topic, that I can't draw much conclusion between the Ohio State team of 2014 and 8 years later. If you were talking about Clemson or Alabama, where the head coach was the same and the culture was the same, then
right,
draw some comparisons. But that 2014 team was obviously coached by Urban Meyer, and Urban Meyer's track record in postseason play is phenomenal. He's like 14-3 in postseason play.
Right.
Also, that team, it was questioned whether they should be in the playoff, but they were still rolling. They hadn't lost since Virginia Tech. They hadn't lost since week 2. They were on a roll. This team may be lacking confidence. See, I don't know if they're going to be steaming mad and motivated, or they're going to be lacking confidence. Nobody knows.
Yeah. Well, I did want to bring up one more thing real quick. What are your thoughts on CJ Stroud being non-committal to a non-playoff game?
Before I answer that, the other thing that you just stated was, two Big Ten teams in the playoff.
Yeah.
Well,
seemed like in the past they kind of try to avoid it.
Ask your friend when there has been a time when there have been 2 Big Ten candidates for the playoff. There's never been a time when there would be 2 selections valid.
Yeah, I think he was trying to make the point more where what year was it where Alabama got in, where a lot of people didn't think they would get in, but
17.
Yeah. And I can't remember who the team they that should have got in over them.
Ohio State.
Yeah, and he thinks that. Well, he said that the SEC owns like 80-some% of, or ESPN owns like 80-some% of the SEC, and they own 100% of the ACC.
Okay, so
something he's seen.
It would be nice if your friend called. He could call sometime.
Yeah,
we could review these playoff years because, for as much as I would like for him to be right about the Big Ten having a valid case for having two teams in, there's never been a year when the Big Ten had a valid case to have two teams in. Number one. And everything that could be said about Alabama getting in 17 could be said about Ohio State getting in 16 as a non-division champion and losing head-to-head to Penn State. So I think that Ohio State have had a few years in which it could have been selected. Certainly 17, 18 would be the 2 years that I think they should have been selected, but 16 is a questionable selection. So, but there was never a year when two Big Ten teams had a valid argument to be selected.
Right.
Now, in terms of, I don't want to discount what he's saying or say that it's wrong about ESPN's relationship with the SEC. And
yeah, I heard someone asking about Nick Saban being on TV thing a lot today. And
yeah, he was on Fox Sports today. I'm sure he was on ESPN at some point. But see, here's the thing. The SEC obviously existed far before ESPN.
Right.
And obviously ESPN would not have been in the position to purchase the SEC for a long, long time in its existence. It just wasn't big enough, didn't have enough money. So at the point that ESPN would have been large enough, there's two things that would have come up that I'm sure we would have heard about. I'm sure this would have been news. Like this would not have escaped us. But number one, Disney owns ESPN. ESPN is not its own corporation.
Right.
So Disney would have had to purchase the SEC, number one, not ESPN. And number two, I'm sure I worked for ESPN for 21 years, or I'm sorry, for 19 years. 21 years ago is when I started, 19 years. So I'm sure I would have heard about this. And I'm sure everybody that follows sports would have heard about this.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a kind of a conspiracy guy, but.
Well, yeah, we would know about this.
Yeah.
ESPN has a partnership with the SEC and has an SEC network.
Yes.
And the same thing with the ACC. Yeah, they have a partnership, but they don't own the conference.
Right. I guess I'm a little like this. I tried calling a couple weeks ago, but I thought Michigan should have been number one after beating Ohio State. I just want to know how the committee I know that the AP poll punished Georgia for the close win against Missouri, but I just feel like what was Michigan's closest win against Illinois, correct?
Yes.
So I just think that closer win against Illinois was still a better, closer win than Georgia. I know Michigan's out of conference schedule was terrible. I just thought that throughout the whole year, I thought Michigan looked clearly the best team in the nation.
You thought Michigan was more dominant than Georgia?
I mean, they didn't have to come back in the fourth quarter to beat a team like Missouri. I mean, it seems like the committee and the
Missouri,
I mean, I know Georgia has the big win over Oregon, and I know that's what's holding water for Georgia. I'm not saying it's wrong that Georgia's the number one seed. I guess that's what I'm saying. I just think that the committee doesn't always look at close wins the same for each team.
Yeah. So I'm going to stick up for Georgia here. Not that I don't think you have a valid argument, because the last time I did rankings, I gave it a lot of thought. I didn't just say Georgia's still number one and Michigan's two. I gave it a lot of thought and I laid out all the wins and losses. But, certainly Georgia has two wins in Oregon and Tennessee. That if you go to Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, I think that's a comparable comparison. And if anything, I'd go with Ohio State and Penn State over Oregon and Tennessee.
Now, are you basing off like where how Tennessee and Oregon are playing now, or how they were playing at the time?
Both. So how they
Okay.
were playing at the time, but also my evaluation of teams changed throughout the year.
Right, as they should.
Yeah. So I don't want to go through all the games right now, but I just
Right.
felt as though Oregon, I keep saying Oregon, I still believe that Georgia had a longer list of better wins than Michigan. And Michigan played a pretty close game against Maryland, and they were, if Illinois would have played a little bit differently down the stretch, I think they would have won the game against Michigan, but that's not Michigan's fault.
Yeah.
Do
Do you feel like
a close game against Missouri? Sure.
would you just two more questions before I go. The one question is your thoughts on the CJ Stroud thing being non-committal to like say a Rose Bowl if this weekend didn't happen, and do you believe that the Big Ten should cancel divisions when USC and UCLA come over?
So I don't like that players don't play in bowl games, because the agreement between the player and the school is that we give you a scholarship, and that's a very valuable thing. And I hate when people say it's not valuable. And before NIL, we had a lot of people on here kicking and screaming for the players and saying that they're, being treated like dirt, and they, blood, sweat, and tears, and they don't get anything for that. Heck yeah, they do. And for anybody out there like myself who has had a child in college and knows the value of a college education and how much it costs, then you would know that that's extremely valuable. And then on top of the college education, they're treated like kings. They get the finest in nutrition, training table, health and nutrition and boarding and everything. So that's extremely valuable. Now, it's not like I don't believe that they should benefit from NIL just like any other American. But
do you think NIL would do anything to change that? Like, hey, if you're going to sign this NIL deal, you're not going to be able to opt out of bowl games, or.
Well, that's up to the individual company. That's not up to the school. The school's not supposed to.
Right. That's what I was asking. Do you think NIL could do something like that?
Sure. If pick a brand, I don't know.
Nike.
If I'm Nike and I say, if I say CJ Stroud, we're going to pay you $500,000 this year, but you're going to have to play through the bowl game because I don't want to, or we're going to not sign you, or we're going to prorate the contract, then he would have to play through the bowl game. But that's up to the company.
Yeah.
That's apparently not being done because CJ Stroud is saying that he's not going to play in a bowl game.
Right.
So I would have felt a lot different about that 5 years ago than I do now, but that's the world in which we live. I don't like it because I don't like to see the bowl games diminished, and I'm still going to die on the sword of bowl games are important and I enjoy them. And I think they're actually more important than a ton of regular season games for these people that have, and I know a lot of fans, and we can all have our own opinion. A lot of fans say, the bowl games are useless, they're exhibitions, whatever. Well, you can make the argument that 3/4 of the regular season games are. Do you think Rutgers' schedule is worth anything? What were those games worth? What did those games mean? They did not impact a championship at all. So were those all meaningless? Okay. And actually, the majority of those bowl games, those teams are going to be watched by more people on that day in that game than they were watched the entire season. Most of them.
Right. Well, I was just telling my buddy earlier about Toledo winning the MAC championship today, and not that it really matters now with USC losing the way they did, but I mean, I guess you could say it helped Ohio State a little bit with them beating a MAC champion by what was it, like 77 to something?
Yep.
Yeah. So, and then just like the last point, would you want to see the Big Ten do away with divisions? Or because they said that they're more concerned with messing up the game by doing that.
they're going to have to be a whole lot smarter than me to figure out how they're not going to mess up the game. And this is why. So if we add USC and UCLA to the West, so my initial, I posted a couple of videos. One was simply add USC and UCLA to the West and move Purdue to the East so they're matched up with Indiana in their rivalry.
Yeah.
And that's going to partially even out the divisions. Not completely, but I don't think you can run this whole guessing game of who's going to be good in the future. You can't do that. They tried to do that with the legends and leaders, and that didn't work.
Yeah.
So I like the geographic split. But so that would even it out to a certain extent because you're getting USC, who could arguably, they could be the best program in the conference. Or they could be second or third. I would be surprised if they were any less than third in the next 5 to 10 years. And UCLA should be a force. They should be another Wisconsin. So I would tend to do it that way. Or if you eliminate divisions, however, then you've got Ohio State and Michigan. You have to keep that rivalry, just like other rivalries. And they would play on the final. If they continue to play in the final game of the season, then you still have the high probability that they're going to play in a conference championship game the next week.
Yeah.
And then you've got the possibility
like that one call
that they're going to play in a playoff game.
Right. Like I think that if USC would have won and TCU would have won, like I feel like TCU's in no matter what, but I feel like if USC would have won, Ohio State would have been punished for being in the same division as Michigan. So like all these people that said don't reward teams sitting at home. Well, when your only loss is against the number 2 team in the nation and you have no control over what division you play in, I think there's a little leeway there that could be fired back at the people who thinks that sitting at home, not playing in a conference championship game, I mean, it could be a little ammo because do these schools have a choice in what division they play in, or is that just strictly up to the Big Ten commissioner?
Yeah, that's the conference. It's strictly a East Division, West Division geographic split.
Well, yeah, because is Indiana and Purdue in the same division?
No.
See, but they're both in Indiana.
Yeah, well, that's where they split it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, see, that's something that like I knew it was pretty much a split, like you said, but I didn't know the whole Purdue Indiana. That one kind of confused me a little bit. So, well, I appreciate you taking my call. Yeah. I'll let you get to the other calls.
Thanks for the call.
I said, first time calling in. So
yeah, call back.
I actually had to come downstairs because I didn't want to be next to my wife. She kind of makes me nervous when I'm talking to people. So
no worries. Have a good one.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. I would have to think long and hard about how to figure that out because that's not what I think college football fans want. I don't think that's what I know. That's what I don't want. I don't think in talking to Ohio State and Michigan fans on here on a regular basis, I think it's a novelty. Like in 2006, when they played as 1 and 2, the last game of the regular season, and then there was a possibility that they would play in the BCS championship game. I thought that was awesome. That would be great. The game, I forget where the 06 championship game was played. It was played in Arizona. Anyway, regardless of where it was played, that it would be phenomenal as a novelty, as like a one time in history, like this would never happen otherwise. And of course it didn't happen. Florida jumped Michigan in the rankings, but I thought of that. But if that's going to happen like over and over and over, then it's going to considerably take away from the regular season game. Charles, what's going on tonight?
Hey, brother, how you doing? Let me just say this, sir. You are one of the best guys out here for us content, talking about college sports, whether it's basketball, football, or even just life. But I'm just going to make a quick comment. I'm going to make a quick comment. And the people, the listening audience, they can dismantle this any way they want to. For a week, sir, for a week, out of respect, for a week, I've been hearing people dog Alabama, talking about they don't deserve to be in the national championship. They don't deserve to be in the playoffs. Well, let's just look at it. Let's look at it. Alabama's been the ring bearer of the college football for the last 8 years. And I'm saying to the listening audience is that I don't listen to other outlets. I go to YouTube and listen to more viable people as yourself and maybe one or two other people. But let's get one thing straight. They thrown us under the bus 2 weeks ago. We lost to Tennessee. And as far as I know, sir, that it's supposed to be 11 on 11 on that field. But you might as well say Tennessee had 12 people on that field because the referee played for Tennessee too. Now, if you want to just back and forth like that tennis match, you can do that. You go over there in the corner and the fans, you can talk about that. Then we went into overtime with LSU. Look what it took for them to beat us. Look what it took. It took everything they had. And now one of them teams ain't been the same since they played us. Oh, they threw us under the bus and they said, oh, USC, oh, TCU, oh, they can't be stopped. Cardiac kids, TCU, oh, USC got this juggernaut offense. And they all but kept us out the playoffs. Okay. But then USC lost. Then TCU lost. And all of a sudden they got quiet. Why is it quiet now? Let's look at this. We have already snatched the jaws of victory out of Georgia on national TV. We crushed their dreams. Ohio State, they don't need to talk either because we whooped them something good in the national championship. And then they made a crucial mistake by putting Notre Dame in the national championship against Alabama when they knew that they could not compete against Alabama, but they put them in there because of their name. And look what happened. I was up drinking and celebrating, and my friend was asleep. It's what it is and ain't what it's supposed to be. You threw us under the bus, and you talked about these 4 teams. Okay, and I heard somebody say, well, if these 4 teams, if the 2 teams lose, well, you know, they should go in the playoff. Okay, we'll make that argument. But if you're going to make that argument, why talk about us? Why you even mention any other team? Why even mention other team? If we're not deserving, then we need to even not even talk about Alabama. But guess what? USC lost, TCU lost, and all of a sudden, everybody quiet. And look who they roll up now, Ohio State. You mean Ohio State, the one that beat Indiana? How about Rutgers? The same Ohio State that struggled against Northwestern? Or how about the Ohio State that got beat down on their home field and now they ain't got nothing to say? Now, I'm not saying that Ohio State don't deserve to be in the playoffs because they was in front of us. But you cannot say, just listen to public, my brothers and sisters, you cannot say that Alabama don't deserve that 4th spot. So let me say in closing, if you think we don't deserve to be in the playoffs, that's your opinion. I respect your opinion. Lord knows I do. But I tell you one thing, when I pray to God. And whoever you pray to, God or Buddha, you better pray one thing. You better pray we ain't number 4. That's what you better pray. Because we all be able to last one of them teams before on a big stage. And they can't tell a story about that. I see it with my own eyes, sir. And like I said, you got one hell of a show. I appreciate your time. God bless you and keep you. And you have a great Christmas and a happy New Year, sir. And so to my brothers and sisters around the world. But I'm telling the truth. You better hope that Alabama ain't number 4. And that's all I got to say.
Charles, well, thank you so much for your phone call, and you're certainly welcome, and we invite you to call back anytime. Let me first ask you this question.
Yes, sir.
Or make this statement / question, and I will say that if you are not a preacher, that you have probably missed your calling.
Yes, sir.
That would be my first statement. My next one would be, okay, I'm understanding from you that you believe that Alabama is disrespected.
In a way, in certain ways, I can understand why they're being disrespected in certain ways because we've been so dominant over the last 8 years, and that can't be denied. So I understand what you're saying.
Well, I would say that if Alabama's been so dominant, and they have, Alabama's been the number 1 program in the country since Nick Saban started there, that if they're being disrespected, then that disrespect is completely misplaced and it's not been earned. But sticking to this particular season, how many two-loss teams are ahead of Alabama?
Well, that's a great point. Now you don't throw that dart at the target and you don't stuck me. So now I got to answer your question. The other teams in front of us have one loss. I think TCU got that loss today. And Michigan is undefeated and Georgia is undefeated. But I would say this, and mind you, I say this. If you put Kansas State in there, then that'll be fine. Then they might as well be a sacrificial lamb for Georgia or Michigan. They ain't going to win. They're going to get beat down. And quiet as it kept, sir, quiet as it kept, that Ohio State and Michigan and TCU, I'm telling you right now, because if I'm wrong, I will come on here and apologize to everybody in this chat. And first, I'm going to start with you. And now, one of those teams, I repeat, now one of those teams is going to beat Georgia. They're not.
Okay, sir. You don't need to apologize to me. You're making very valid points, but I'm just trying to clarify a few things.
Yes, sir.
So I'm just trying to make the point that Alabama's not disrespected. If anything, Alabama is greatly respected because they are the highest ranked two-loss team, first and foremost. So they're greatly respected. The next point would be, I have a tremendous amount of respect, as I should, and we all should, for what Alabama's accomplished in the past. But we are focused on the 2022 season because we are selecting playoff teams for the 22 season. Okay.
Right.
So what's happened in the past shouldn't matter, correct? Do you agree with that?
I agree with that.
Okay. All right.
And you're right. All I say is this. If that's what you're saying, which I agree with, if that's what you're saying is right, what I'm saying is, why even mention Alabama at all? Just say these are the 4 teams that's going to play for the national championship and let everybody else know where they're going to play their bowl game. It seems like
that's what's going to happen tomorrow. The committee is going to announce who's playing in the playoff, and then the rest of the bowl games are going to be announced.
Right. I just say this, and I say this in all respect and all love, because I'm not coming on here to disrespect nobody's school. Nobody's school. Let's just get that straight off the jump. But what I'm saying is that I was born and raised in Alabama. And you either was Alabama and Auburn in my home, so it's many homes in Alabama. And you was either Alabama or you was Auburn, and you was nothing else. And I'm saying is that Alabama isn't the most talented Alabama team in recent years, but they're good enough, just good enough, or maybe good enough to beat one of those teams that's in the Final Four. Now, if anybody think I'm wrong, if they think I'm wrong, I'm telling the fans out there, don't let us be number 4. I want the committee to make the right decision. Pray that we're not number 4, because if we are, we're going to wreck somebody's dream. Because it's one thing about Nick Saban. Say what you want to say. Say he's arrogant. Say he's got a lot of money. Say he's boastful in what he do. One thing Nick Saban is one hell of a coach. And I'm going to tell you something. You find me one coach in the country that's got a lifetime contract. Show me one coach in the country that's got full control of his football team and everything around it. When you find that coach, you give me a call. And all I got to say is thank you for your time, sir. You made a valiant point. I respect your show. You're one of the best out here. And I want to be able to call back with your permission. But I'm telling the fans out there now, just pray we're not number 4. Because you're going to have to prove to me and all the great people in the great state of Alabama that Michigan, Ohio State, or Georgia can beat us, which they have in the past. But you're going to have to prove to us on that field that you can beat us. And that's the way it goes. You have to almost kill yourself to beat Alabama. And everybody knows that. Look at Tennessee and LSU. They had to almost do everything to beat us. We are not an easy out for nobody. And as I said, God bless you, sir. You have an amazing Christmas and a happy New Year to you and your family.
Thank you, Charles. God bless you as well. Thank you so much for calling, and I hope you will call back soon.
Yes, sir. Will do.
All right. Spirited Charles delivered. Man. Woo! All right. Let me pick up this super chat coming in from Dan. How about a lottery? Every top 25 team or win gets you a ball in the lottery. We could do it like that, because what we've got coming up in 2 years is an expansion that most of us want. However, the selection of those teams is going to be tricky. It's going to be worse than this, more chaotic, which means good news for my channel, because we can talk more about this and we can produce more videos on more controversy, because this particular season, go look at the college football playoff rankings and then try to determine which teams should make it. Kansas State would be a great survey, great case sample, because they came into this championship game at 9-3, number 10 in the country, meaning they would have had the second to final playoff spot. Had they lost this championship game against TCU, what do you do with them? From a record standpoint, they go 9-4, they drop out. But their performance on the field, going to overtime with TCU, a playoff team, a top 3 seed, conference champion with a bye, the logic is that 9-4 actually gained weight. So they're going to have a lot of difficult decisions to make, and it's going to become even more controversial, the selections, because there are going to be more candidates for those additional spots. All right, we got Sean on the line. Sean, how you doing?
Oh, wonderful as always. Yourself, Mark?
I'm doing great. What's going on?
Oh, whole lot here. Crazy end of the year, I guess. Are you saying are the top 4 just like clearly locked in right now? I mean, I can't. What is it, like 95% you would say or so?
Yes.
Those 4.
Yes.
Okay. So what about the 3 and the 4? How do they see those?
If Ohio State going to 3 and TCU going to 4 would not create a Michigan-Ohio State rematch in the first round, then I would tell you that it's not as high, that there would be consideration to lift Ohio State above TCU. But since that creates a rematch in the first round, then that's what negates that option.
Okay, so I was what I was thinking is I'm trying to get to the mind of this committee, which is a terrible, dark thing to do. I wouldn't recommend it. The committee might be thinking something about television ratings and eyeballs, and just sort of the ideas of mismatches, which they might. My estimate is the perception is Georgia's probably a bit of a mismatch for all of them. They're clearly the best team. I'm not saying I believe that, but I'm saying I'm pretty sure that's the general perception.
Yeah,
that they're the clear number 1.
It could be,
and that TCU, even after this season, I don't think a lot of people are real believers in them, and that they can really match up and play 60 minutes with Michigan. And that maybe Ohio State can't match up and play 60 minutes with Georgia either. So you could get Michigan and Ohio State, which certainly would seem to be the most competitive matchup.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just from perception.
Yeah.
And then, you throw TCU to the Wolves against Georgia. And so you at least get one huge epic, You
could be right. I was thinking of it the entirely opposite way, that the committee does not want they want to create two better TV games, and the better TV games would be Ohio State against Georgia. People want to see that game, even if it's a potential blowout. Ohio State's always going to bring viewership.
Yeah.
And that's just a great name brand game. And then Michigan TCU isn't necessarily that, but it'll set up an Ohio State, or I'm sorry, it'll set up a Michigan Georgia most likely game that everyone's anticipating, as opposed to Ohio State and Michigan playing in the first round. I just don't see where TCU lost in an egregious way to drop in the rankings.
The one argument I've heard is that they have not displayed really much dominance at all through the season, throughout the year. They've played. I give the Big 12 a lot of credit. I think they've improved the depth of the league. There's not really a bad team in that league.
True,
but there's not. How many teams were even ranked in the last CFP ranking? Were in the Big 12?
TCU, Texas,
K-State.
K-State. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So I mean, the quality wins are. I mean, they're decent, but you know they've put up together a good resume, but it's nothing earth-shattering. They don't have a win
in the Big 12. Is not horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it'll be interesting just to see that matchup, that ranking, and see. Is this the first time we've had two teams from the same division in the same conference in the playoff?
In the same division? Yes, I guess so, because the only other times we had two teams from the same conference would be that crazy Notre Dame Clemson. So there was no division that year in the ACC. And then it was just Alabama, Georgia, and Alabama, Georgia. Yep.
Yeah, So it's interesting. I was looking back at that 2017 season. Auburn finished the regular season with 2 losses because they lost a game to Clemson.
Yep.
Early in that regular season.
And LSU.
And then LSU down the road. And I'm thinking, man, if they would have just scheduled like an easy win instead of playing Clemson, they'd probably get into the playoff that year.
Oh,
it would have been pretty.
Well,
If
the way that's set up was they beat 2 number 1 teams in the final 3 weeks of the season.
Yep.
They beat Georgia. They beat Alabama. Both were ranked number 1 at the time. So that put them at either 2 or 3 going into the SEC championship game, even though they had 2 losses. So that's unprecedented that a 2-loss team is sitting at 2 or 3 in the rankings going into the championship game. So under your scenario, had they not played Clemson, they would have had 1 loss going into the SEC championship game, but they lost by 3 touchdowns to Georgia. That would have knocked them out anyway.
But Alabama took that spot. How could you possibly put them behind the team that they just beat and finish the regular season with the same record? Are you punishing them for playing that extra game?
Look at the previous year. The exact same thing happened. Penn State beat Ohio State. Ohio State had 1 loss. Penn State had 2. They left out Penn State, who won the championship.
I mean, that's they didn't finish the regular season, though.
But Penn State won the Big Ten championship. Auburn would have lost the SEC championship game. So actually, that's an even less valid resume.
Yeah, that's also true. And Ohio State definitely cost themselves the next year playing Oklahoma in the non-conference.
That was the same season, 17.
Oh yeah, that was the same season. Yeah, they finished that year with 2 losses. A 1-loss Big Ten team,
and they finished number 5. And that was the controversy at the end of that season was, is it going to be Alabama or Ohio State?
Ohio State.
Yep.
Yeah. So, lots of interesting dynamics going on here. And I was thinking through this under like the playoffs that's getting proposed, right? The top 4 teams all have to be conference champions, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
So it would be kind of a wonky, because two of the teams that are in the playoffs right now would not be in that top four.
Well, so Georgia, Michigan, Clemson, Utah, and
K-State,
Kansas State would all be in the playoff. That would be kind of cool. I would enjoy that.
Yeah.
And then I guess your top four would be Georgia, Michigan, probably Utah, and Clemson would be your top four seeds.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah, that doesn't look anything like the playoff picture we have right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
and then Ohio State would be the 5, I guess, and then maybe Alabama would be the 6 seed, and then maybe USC, etc.
Nice. Okay, just one last thing before I head on out of here. Coach Prime headed to the Buffalo Towns. The first things about all that rumors about him in Nebraska that seemed so solid a few weeks ago. Was that a lot of smoke, or did something fall apart there? Are you privy to any of that?
I'm not privy to it. However, when I kind of put things together, and I know a few people that cover Nebraska and have legitimate sources, that I'm not going to pretend to know how close it was or if it was legitimate, but I think this proves to us that there were people within the Nebraska administration hierarchy who wanted that to happen or were curious to pursue that. So I think that's where that came from, that there were thoughts in that direction, at least, if not overtures.
Absolutely. And
because you got to think about it this way. He's the ultimate boom or bust guy. And for Colorado, why not? Why not become relevant? Why not make headlines? And if he can connect with student athletes like we believe that he can, and he can surround himself with a good coaching staff, and I'm not trying to discount his X's and O's ability. The guy played for 14 years in the NFL. I think that gets disregarded because he's never been a head coach before. But if he can surround himself with good people and he can bring in guys through the portal and through traditional recruiting, the boom is so much. And even if he goes south and it becomes a bust hire, at least for a short period, you've made bust hires anyway.
Yeah.
You might as well go for broke. And if it's a bust hire, at least it created buzz and headlines for a time.
And they can't be any worse than they've been the past decade.
Absolutely.
I mean, in Colorado, no offense to anyone that lives out there, I love this state. It's one of my favorite places on earth, but it's probably not the easiest place on earth to recruit to. It's very isolated. I mean, there's not a ton of high school talent around there. You generally see maybe, like, if you look at the top 500, there's maybe 1 or 2 a year from the state of Colorado. You have to have someone that can bring in some buzz and get, I mean, I think his recruiting chops he's already proven that to the nth degree so far. So I'm excited to see what's going to come from that. So thanks, Mark. Looking forward to tomorrow.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sean.
Take care.
And just a reminder, we will be here live. That will be at noon Eastern time for the watch party to see the college football playoff selections, the final rankings, and then throughout the day with bowl selections that will follow past that. Appreciate the Super Chat contribution coming in from Demetrius. You have to bring this guy back on tomorrow. That was our preacher from a couple calls ago, I believe. The ratings will go through the roof. Right. Then we've got Hall of Fame City Gaming. Brings up Bama versus Ohio State in the Natty, but not the Zeke game. Yeah, that was going to be my next point. So our caller back then certainly went on a bit of a tirade, and I certainly was going to interact with him, but he just wanted to make his points and get off the line. Otherwise, yes. Anybody that brings up the past in relating that to what's going on right now, then if you want to play that game, then you can cut it off wherever you want. So anybody that brings up the Ohio State Alabama national championship game from 2020, relating it to right now, well, what's their record in the playoffs? It's 1-1. So why is the 2020 game relevant and not the 2014 game? Well, because that was 8 years ago. Well, the other one's 2 years ago. It has nothing to do with what's going on right now. So if you're going to bring up one, you got to be open to bring up the other. There you go. We got Tim on the line. Tim, what's going on tonight?
Great show, Mark. Been enjoying it all night.
Thank
Excellent.
you.
Yeah.
Great show out of you guys last night. How was the ball game, other than the obvious in the second half?
Actually, it was all right. It was a 3-point game in the fourth quarter, right?
Sure.
It was just
it was a great
end of the game.
I enjoyed it.
I was amazed that they were with Caleb going down the first quarter. I was surprised they were able to keep it close the whole game. It's pretty amazing testament to him. It was awesome.
That's the unfortunate thing is I don't know who would have won the game, but I would not be surprised if USC would have won that game if he would have been healthy, and I wouldn't have not been surprised if he were completely healthy that wouldn't have been quite enough, but we'll never know.
Yeah, who knows? We won't know. Great game by the Utes. I mean, by far. I mean, I've seen some great games where fans like the Husker fans, top notch. Irish fans in South Bend, just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Just great fans. But the Ute fans, year in and year out, they have to be just the greatest fans in college football. I've knowledgeable and really just great fans. No smack talk, and they're just generally great fans to talk to. But I'm just calling because last night was last night. But look at the season. I thought I'd just wait till the end of the regular season, look back on what Riley's done this year, and just kind of shaking my head just in amazement. From 4-8 to 11-2. And that's a hell of a turnaround for anyone. I mean, I know Rick, Tony, and I said 8-4, and we expected that, right? We thought, injuries happen. We knew we were talented, but very thin on both sides of the line. But it's cool because injuries caught up with us last night. I do agree with that. But man, we thought we wouldn't get this far. No wait, 11. We were 11-1, and then lose the championship game. Those thoughts at the beginning of this year. Did you have any expectation for that at all, Mark?
9-3 was my pick. 7-2 in the conference.
Yeah, so just blows everyone's expectations out of the water. I mean, it's weird. We really were giving Riley a lot of credit to 8-4, and you say 9-3 because you're talking about a team that got blown out by BYU last year, blown out by not blown out, lost to BYU, lost to Cal, got destroyed by UCLA. Just the turnaround alone is just remarkable, actually.
The only thing I'll say is, and this is not a knock on Lincoln Riley by any stretch, it's just that he's taking advantage of the current rules and the current climate. He would not have had this opportunity 5 years ago to turn over the roster.
Not turn over the roster the way he has, but the portal's been around for quite some time.
But nobody's used it. I would have to do research to figure out at what point, nobody's used the undergrad transfer portal the way it's been used in the past, I'd say 3 off seasons.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. It's a small sample size, but I will say this, it takes a special coach and a special location. Not everybody can do what happened to USC this year. It's not like something, we've seen the model. We'll do what Lincoln Riley did. Not everybody's Lincoln Riley. They can't whisper and say, "Hey, come play," come play for us. And then all of a sudden people are flocking. And it was no question that he wanted people to come in. It's not like tampering, just saying that you need people. Think of it this way, right? We went from the toilet last year at 4-8. And now we're going into our 40th New Year's Six Bowl. I mean, did anyone peg us for a New York Six Bowl in the first year of Lincoln Riley's turnaround? Only Oklahoma, and we're like in lofty categories of Oklahoma and Alabama, really as schools that have like 40 New York Six. This is our 40th. This Cotton Bowl we're going to get will be the 40th time we had a New York Six Bowl. So that's pretty amazing, and that's great company being there with Oklahoma and Alabama when it comes to these big bowls. And for Riley to do it from we were terrible. We're the bottom of the Pac-12 in a bad Pac-12 last year. And now all of a sudden we're looking at the Cotton Bowl. And I see these people throwing, Here's what people got to realize in the chat. I'm looking at it. I'm just gonna make a really quick note of it. Michigan man Jason, number 92D. Yeah, but we're actually 56th in scoring. Oh, sorry. I take that back. We went from in scoring, we're on offense, we were from 56th in the country to 3, but on defense last year we were 98th in scoring defense. Right, Mark? 98th.
Yep.
And we're 55th this year at 26.3. You might be talking about total yards. You don't win games by having less yards than people. You win games by having less points. And he went from 98th in the country, a terrible, horrible defense. And in 1 year, he only had a couple of months too. You know what I mean? He didn't have a whole recruiting class. We doesn't even have a whole recruiting class to get his guys in. But just by grabbing some 3-star guys to put on our line, he went from being 98th in scoring defense to 55th. And one more thing people got to realize is if you look at the top scoring and top offenses in the country, guess where they are? You got places like Utah and Oregon and Washington and UCLA that they all play. And those teams I just named, they put up a lot of points. So you want to sit there and crack on our defense? Dude, go right ahead. But remember, hey, Mark, how many guys on the USC defensive line are 3-stars? Who would you guess?
3 stars on like the starting 4 or the top 8?
Starting 4.
The starting 4, 3 stars, I'd say 2.
All of them.
Okay. Even
Foreman's not a starter. Foreman's not starting. He's a 5-star, but he doesn't start. There are 7 3-stars on our defense. 7 3-stars. 0 5-stars on that defense. Let that sink in, guys. They're ragging on the defense. So I don't want to get dragged into the mire of this. I'm just excited. This is a team everyone said would go. I remember being in chat saying 6-6. Hey guys, we're 11-2 and going to the Cotton Bowl. What's your team doing? So just think about that for about 5 minutes.
Well, you are right. So obviously the best player up front is Tui Palolo,
who's a 3-star.
Who's a 3-star. Wow.
Nua's done a great job. Nua's turned those 3-star guys into studs. And guys like Mateo. Imagine we got guys like Mateo and the other 5-star studs that we're going to start pulling in. Imagine when we have guys transfer. The transfer portal is going to be like Christmas for Trojans. It's just going to be a wonderful, wonderful offseason. And just celebrating this great year we've had.
Tim, we've got another caller who wants to jump on with you.
Okay.
Got David Knight here. David.
What's up, David Knight?
What's up, Tim?
So what do you think about the Trojan season, David Knight?
Man, here's the crazy thing about this, Tim, is that it's very difficult in this college football world to do plug and play, right? Very difficult.
Yeah.
But somehow I will give USC and Lincoln Riley credit that you pulled it off. And I know you got some good recruits coming in. And, I've talked to Mark extensively about recruiting, and it's incredible feat for you to look at where you were last year to move forward to this year. Yeah, I give you in USC and their program, Lincoln Riley, new head coach, a ton of credit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm truly amazed and laughing at the chat. Soft defenses don't hold Charbonnet to under 100 yards. They don't hold a good rushing attack at Notre Dame, as you know, David Knight, to under 100 yards.
Yeah.
So a soft team's not going to do that. They don't have the players, folks, in the chat. They literally had 3 or 4 months to go out in the portal and scare off a bunch of the guys that Helton had, pulled in some 3-stars, patched it together, tried to create a culture in a few months, and pulled off this amazing season. That's, I don't know. I'm waiting for someone to give me a logical explanation on how that's not a complete success.
Hey, Tim, let me ask you a question. How old are you?
Why, you going to date me or something? I'm 50 now.
Okay, well.
I'm married, though,
I'll be 60
David,
in May.
I just want to let you know I'm married.
Damn, there goes my bag. No, what I was going to say, when I was growing up watching college football, USC was the best. I mean, USC was the best. 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 USC was the b that team. It's in the early 70s, right? And they have phenomenal wide receivers, phenomenal quarterbacks, phenomenal, running backs, defensive linemen. You guys remember Richard Wood, who was a really great defensive lineman for USC.
And there before me, my dad's talked about him. Yeah, Batman, right? His nickname, Batman Wood. Yeah.
There was a long time when Notre Dame, whenever we played USC, we're like, hey, let's just hope we don't get skunked, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but everything's cyclical in this world. And man, Mark, I did have one thing I wanted to ask you, and that if that's okay with you, Tim.
Sure. What do you want to ask?
No, Mark, you think because it seems like Ohio State has had phenomenal recruiting classes, and I know USC will start to do that as well. But does the coaching carousel, because of the and actually I think it was go back to Urban Meyer, where he had assembled a good coaching staff, that we all know that as guys are very proficient and very good at what they do, it's natural to want to elevate yourself in a coaching role where you may end up at another university because you took a higher up position. Do you think that's affected the Ryan Day staff? It's purely a question.
Well, Ryan Day has been able to maintain the same level of recruiting as Urban Meyer, but to your point, Ohio State's been a little uneven in its recruiting level. The wide receiver position has been ridiculously high.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Quarterback, defensive line, the linebacker play. Now, their linebacker play this year was really good for the first time in about 4 or 5 years. They have been marginal at linebacker by their standards. During Urban Meyer's tenure, their defensive backs were, I would argue, the best in the nation in terms of NFL draft selections. I think that can be proven. They haven't been quite as good, and maybe that is because of a lot of turnover in defensive backs coaches. Jeff Hafley, who was their defensive backs coach during a successful run, moved on to Boston College as a head coach. The coach he was replaced with, they got rid of because of poor performance, and now they've got 2 new defensive backs coach. They brought in one from Cincinnati and one from the NFL. So maybe that's been a cause of, and when I talk about a downgrade in defensive backs recruiting, I'm still talking about top 5 to 10 in the country, but not what it was under Urban Meyer. So
yeah, but they're still very good football players.
Sure.
Okay, like flipping back to Tim, who was the quarterback I've heard a lot of things about that's coming in next year as a freshman?
Malachi Nelson, most likely the best quarterback in the country. Yeah.
And
he's probably be our 9th Heisman Trophy winner, put it that way.
Mark said, we'll see.
Well, I mean, Lincoln's on a pace of getting one every other year, right? Caleb's gonna win this year. That's gonna be 3 out of 6. And then he's getting probably one of the best quarterbacks in the country, along with 2 of the best receivers in the country. I talked about the defense, but I did a little research, and you guys got to realize on offense, we have 5 3-stars on our offense. We got a couple receivers in Caleb. The rest of the guys are 3-stars. Wait until Riley starts bringing in through recruiting classes and through the portal. Just have a wait, because I've seen this year. I think that recruits and players around the country are kind of waiting it out, saying, "Yeah, guy's a good coach, but can he do it away from Oklahoma? What's the situation over at USC?" And he took a bunch of 3-stars, and you better bet they're probably saying, "Hey, look how we developed these guys." They crack on Helton and those guys. They were bringing up 5-stars, and these guys weren't even getting drafted. Now they got Tui Pelotu, who's a 3-star, and Nua's turned him into probably a second round draft pick, led the country in sacks. It's going to be amazing. Can't wait till these kids hear what they have to sell. And I mean, we all know historically USC can recruit. If we get 10-win seasons, Helton was getting top 5 classes. Can you imagine what this group's going to do? Sean Newis, look at his chops.
Tim, let me ask you something. I think you had told me before when I jumped on during one of the After Dark situations or shows where I think you told me, and maybe it was Tony or Rick that said it, but that you had a lot of upperclassmen along your offensive line. Do you guys have a good way to alleviate the attrition when they move along, because they're going to graduate, go on to the pros, or go on into the normal areas of work that the rest of us do? Is there a plan? Do you have good recruits coming in to backfill them? Because the offensive line is important.
At USC?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Mark and you were just talking about. It's called the transfer portal. Look around the country and look for 4-star guys that aren't happy. They're solid, good frames. That Henson, who's one of the best offensive. That's another thing. What Henson has done with his offensive line, again, a bunch of some 3-star guys mixed in here and there, and put them together to have a really great season. He's going to be able to show tape. He's going to be able to show results to all these kids. They have the number 3 offense in the country with 3-star guys. Can you imagine going around and saying, "Hey, you guys want to come play for us?" They improved their rush offense. It was like 40 yards a game. They went from I think the 80s all the way down to the 40s in rush offense. So the numbers are there. Restocking, I can't wait for this offseason. For the first time in ages, they're going to – I mean, think about it. If you're a kid in this country, you play offense or you play defensive line, and you've seen what the production has been, why wouldn't you come?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. So let me shift back to, just for a second, to Mark in Ohio State. Mark, what do you think is, as far as a positional group that Ohio State's maybe not clicking on all cylinders, what would you say that is? Because we know the wide receiver is astronomical.
There are 2 underachieving position groups. There are 3 underachieving, but one is so talented that even though they're underachieving, they're still playing top 10 to 15 level in the country. So my answer is, number 1, defensive backs by far is the most underachieving. And that was going into the Michigan game. And I said, this is the problem with the team, first and foremost, from just a nuts and bolts, X's and O's standpoint. The defensive backs, they're not horrible. They're not bad. If you were watching Illinois or Michigan State play, you'd say, fine, but not at Ohio State. They're not good enough. They blow too many coverages, and just athletically, they're not top end as a group. They will not produce any first or second round picks in that secondary. They will get drafted 4th, 5th round kind of guys. The second group would be the one that's underachieved, but still is so talented. It's playing well, but it's not the wrecking crew that it should be. And that's the defensive line. It's not consistent enough, but they make game-changing plays because they are so talented and they have so many 5-star players and talented players on the defensive front, but they do not consistently stop the run or get a pass rush up to their ability. And then the third group would be the offensive line from a run blocking standpoint. They are tremendous pass protectors. I cannot ask for anything else out of them as pass protectors, but as a run blocking line, they're underachieving.
Let me ask you this, though.
Sorry, David, I'm going to throw one other thing out at you.
Sure.
As blockers, the receivers are not doing their job as blockers.
Oh, okay. Well, and that plays into it, right?
They throw a lot of screen passes where they need that other receiver to be a blocker, and they blow and whiff on blocks, and that doesn't work. If you're going to throw as many screen passes as Ohio State and say, we want to get this guy in space. Well, that guy that's out in tandem with that other wide receiver needs to throw a block or get in somebody's way.
The next question I have, and Tim, Mark, either one of you or both of you, and this kind of goes into what you're saying, is when you have an offensive line that is good at either run blocking or they're good at pass blocking, is it tremendously difficult to be very excellent or excel in both areas? I mean, I'm asking as a question because I don't know that answer. To be able to excel in run blocking and pass protection.
Yeah, there's, of course. I mean, your elite linemen do both. They all love to run block a lot more than pass block, right?
Yeah,
but when you get elite linemen, they're able to do both. I'm not sure how to really answer your question. There's plenty of them out there. Yeah, we see them play on Sundays all the time, right? They're out there. They start in college.
Well, yeah, of course. But I've seen college, and I'm not really being specific to Ohio State, USC, or my team. I'm saying in college football in general. I've seen teams where they seem like they do very well at pass protection and maybe not so well at run blocking, or vice versa. So I just was like posing it as a question, how difficult is that to do both? And
yeah, I mean, obviously, right, you do need both. But most Division I O linemen are adequate at both. Most, sure. But I mean, I don't know really to answer for you. But yeah, other than yes, there are your elite linemen are excel at both. That's not much of an answer, but they're out there.
Of course.
What Ohio State is doing right now as an offensive line in terms of its production is, I'm not going to say it's completely rare, but it's the exception that they're better as pass protectors, because that's a more difficult skill to develop. And as Tim says, most offensive linemen like to run block for obvious reasons. Number one, it's more aggressive. It's easier. You're moving forward. You're initiating contact. You're a football player because of your size and your strength, and you want to be aggressive rather than backpedaling and trying to catch guys. And it's just a difficult, big men trying to backpedal and play in space and do all those things. And there's more coordination involved between who's going to pick up, a second guy that's coming through the line, all those sorts of things. So it's more difficult. So it's more of an aberration that you have a really excellent pass protection line and again, this is by Ohio State standards, a good run blocking line, but they have far too many breakdowns.
Yeah, and that's where you come into your also pass blocking comes your measurables, right? Wingspan, arms.
Yeah, that's
where you get the elite guys. When you hear about 5-star offensive tackles, they're looking at those measurables and then assuming what their bend is, right? How well they move their feet. We know the guys throughout history that've been just exceptional at both, but they're definitely out there.
Yeah, they got length, right? So they're able to lock people out.
And there's technique. I mean, there's it's all of it. But a good coach, good coach like Henson, was one of the best steals we had from Texas A&M, not just for recruiting, but and then also I saw, Mark, you guys are going back and forth with the reel that we're number 14. I want to remind everybody that you don't win the recruiting championship until all said and done. And we just had a lower rated guy drop from us, because that's always a great sign when like a 4-star who's good. I really like him, but when he just leaves for UCLA and UCLA tries to paint the narrative that, hey, we flipped this guy, it's probably more like the news that the staff probably said, hey, we got some other guys coming in. You might want to look somewhere else. So there have been no reason for this guy to flip at this point, except for the fact that that USC is just going to be closing really strong.
So what about Alex Grinch? You think he's acquitted himself as a defensive coordinator?
He's improved himself.
Posing the question, right?
Well, we're looking at historically, and this is not hyperbole, and Mark, if you could back me up, have you ever seen a USC defense worse than the one you saw last year? Like ever? In all the years? Is it even close, Mark?
No.
Right.
No.
Would you say that this defense wasn't great? And what happened in the fourth quarter was weird. Riley tried to break it down and saying that, and you can see what they're doing. They're trying to strip the ball. They're panicking. They're trying to go for turnovers. on one play in particular, it was like a 3rd and 19. The guy had him right about maybe 4 or 5 yards short of sticks. He's trying to reach for the ball.
Yes, that was.
The guy just bounces off him and runs.
McCutcheon.
Huh?
I think that was Dalen McCutcheon.
Yeah, McCutcheon has been a disappointment from Oklahoma.
I made the same point to Matt. I said it was strange because if I just saw that one play, I would think that guy is a typical defensive back who wants to shy away from contact, who doesn't want to bring somebody to the ground. But Dalen McCutcheon made 2 of the bigger hits in the game. So I thought he's trying to like tackle the guy and strip the ball at the same time, and it's not working.
Yeah, it was poor technique. And I guess the guy at the presser goes, so are you teaching them to try to strip the ball first, then tackle? And Riley, without even saying anything, he goes, I'm not even dignify that question with an answer next. Just moved on. It's like, no, they don't tell the kids to do that. It's just a kid. He's I don't call him a kid. The young man is thinking in the moment, made a bad choice, and it got sloppy down there. Realized that it was they scored 24 points in the first 4 quarters of that game. It broke open at the end. It was ugly. I'm not going to make any defenses for it. It was a 3, even with everything going against USC, it was a 3-point game in the 4th quarter. And then it just turned into a Benny Hill. You know, the beginning of Benny Hill, you guys, when the guys were running around to music. Oh, yeah. That's exactly. And because here's the thing, and it was really disappointing. I think, Mark, you've alluded to this. The last 2 weeks, the defense has been really, tackling well, like very well, making all the tackles. And for the 3 quarters of this game, there were some spotty moments, but in general, they were tackling and hitting well. And then all of a sudden, the 4th quarter, for some unknown reason, I started hearing the Benny Hill music every time the ball was in the air, and I'm like, these guys were turning maybe 10-yard pickups into 60-yard scampers, and it was like, it was painful and like laughable at the same time. I'm just looking at it going, is this really what these guys are doing out there? So, yeah, the defense. So going back to Grinch, and I think Tony put it perfectly last night. If you watch that game and you watch that from a defensive perspective, the guys were in place to make the plays. Of course, guys were open a couple of times, but that happens in college football. But I mean, in general, there were guys there to make plays, and they just didn't make plays. Is that? I mean, you can say, well, he's got to get position guys, or teach him how to tackle, wrap up, and blah blah blah. That's true. Or is it just that we have a bunch of 3-star guys running around out there, that are playing against a team in Utah that I know a lot of people don't like to give them credit, but I don't know where they're pulling these tight ends out of. But that 87, I mean, that 87, that guy, he's like Australian rules. It was cool because I was in a suite, but I was with the people that were hosting us at the Bank of America suite were Utah fans, my brother's friends. They own like a brewery, and anyway, so we're there, and they were explaining to us this guy is an Australian rules football player that they picked up his number 87, just a beast, and the guy's like 6'6", hurdling guys and throwing people around like children. I don't know where they find these tight ends, but Beefy and Kincaid. Now this guy is pretty amazing out there. I think that, is it the coaching? I don't think it is. It's the scheme. I think the guys were in position to make plays. They just didn't make plays.
You know who the one guy in that defensive backfield that's playing better than when I watched him play last year, and he's playing more physical, is Bryson Shaw. He's a better player for USC than he was for Ohio State, believe it or not.
He had 2 of the bigger mistakes in the game. He's one of the guys that kind of bounced it. He has been tackling very well, and he has been playing well in general, Mark. Yeah. But he missed that interception right in his hands. That was painful. But later on, he was the guy that got that fumble recovery. So I mean, he's playing well, but he's a 3-star guy.
Yeah,
And we just grabbed, he would have been an afterthought in Ohio State, and we were just grabbing guys because the guys that Helton had on defense, like Mark said, like I will tell you, were and anybody that watched USC last year, I'm not exaggerating, the worst in all of the years I've watched USC, and it's not even close defensively.
Yeah, and even the better Helton defenses, I would always look at and think, I'd pick out about 5 dudes and I'd be like, those 5 are exceptional. Like Tufunga. He was one of my favorite players to watch in recent USC defenses. But as a unit, they were just a mess.
Well, you had a Dory Jackson mixed in, Hufanga. There was some
like
studs.
that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Well, it just wasn't. and this is Helton and a really horrible recruiters, right? The recruiters we have in now are a whole different world. Uncle Rico, USC's 11th in talent composite. Dude, listen, a couple of things you got to go on this. One, there's a bunch of guys, like, for instance, we have, and I think he will eventually be good, but there are a bunch of guys, we have a bunch of 4-star guys that were probably rated 4 stars because they chose USC. That we don't have a lot of talent on USC. It's been a lot of coaching. We've got some really good guys on both sides of the ball, but if you think we have the 11th best talent composite, what are you basing on? 247?
Yeah.
I mean, we have to give credence to these people. They do a good job over 247, but it's not exactly rocket science that they're doing over there. These guys do get it wrong. And anyone that looked at USC last year and would say that they had like I think they were in like top 10, top 11 last year as well. Anyone looking at that roster, they're off their rocker if they think that they have the 11th best roster in the country. If
you want to make a comparison, Ohio State has 15 5 stars and USC has 3. And
one of them doesn't play.
Ohio State has 51 4 stars and USC has 35. So that's pretty significant difference.
You know, Mark, another incredible thing was we have talked about the 2015 Ohio State football team. They put 22 guys in the NFL off one roster. That's amazing.
That really is amazing. What I'm looking at though is you look at the top 10 teams in the country, right?
Yeah.
Let's do the top 5 or so. Going into this game, the top 5 teams into the weekend. All of them, besides TCU and USC, have been together in building squads. Do you know what I mean? They've been building and building and building their program to fit their culture and everything. That makes what TCU and USC did this year even more amazing to do it, and turn around. And I would argue Sonny Dykes is doing just a phenomenal job, and so did Lincoln Riley. I think both are just huge success stories. No matter how it shakes out the rest of the year, to turn programs around like that, it's truly amazing. And I am more than happy with this season. I don't know what you guys think about the season, thinking that maybe because they came a bit short in the conference championship game, a game that no one thought they should even be in. I'm just not going to let it define the season. I just don't see that. I just don't see that narrative. I am completely.
Well, Tim, think about it. From 4-8 to 11-2, extremely impressive. Especially, and here's one thing I always feel like people underestimate is that when you introduce a new coaching staff, you bring guys in from the transfer portal. Everybody is in an adjustment scenario, right? Because you're trying to adapt to a new way of coaching. You're trying to adapt, even to a new way of life. You're at the University of Southern California. You're in classes, you're in practice, you're lifting weights, and you got all brand new coaches. So everything is an adjustment. And it comes from with the coaches, and it comes from the new players, and it also comes from the players, say they've been there for 3 or 4 years. It's a big adjustment for everybody. And to do that, huge kudos to USC.
Yep. And by the way, Whoa Nelly college football game, that's a mouthful. We stink. If you think I'm saying we stink, let me repeat again. We're 11-2 going to our 40th New York Six Bowl. We have a Heisman Trophy winner in year 1. And we have a defensive end that's leading the country in sacks. That's probably up for awards as well. We got a guard that's probably going in the first round. We don't stink. What I'm saying is we don't have the guys and the roster that a lot of these programs that we're comparing them to have. So when you say, your defense is weak, I just told you we have 7 3-stars on our defense. And we're playing up against, I don't know, is it 4 of the top 15 offenses? Probably 3 of the top 10 offenses, 3 of the top 5 offenses in the country. I don't know where Washington and Oregon and UCLA and Utah rank. I mean, they've got to be way up there. So you got to factor that in.
Hey, you guys, thank you for having me. I see somebody else is trying to jump in, so let me make some room. It's Tim, Mark, always a blessing to talk with you guys, and thank you. I appreciate appreciate it.
David, you're one of my favorites. I always chat with you in the chat, man. You always bring a great insight, so I appreciate you.
David, good to see you. You know it's great to see you. Have a good night.
Yeah, and I was just calling, and then John DeLune, I don't know what this guy's name is. John, he keeps talking about USC's weak. You know what's weak is when your team loses 4 games. That's weak, buddy. Don't crack out a team that lost 2 games when your team lost 4 games. And I'm not getting into SEC bullcrap. I'm just gonna say, don't come in talking one team's weak when your team lost 4 games this year. Sorry, pal.
Who does John root for?
What is it?
Who does John root for?
LSU. He's constantly always talking about corn dogs and stuff. Yeah.
Solar.
Hello.
How you doing? What's going on tonight?
Good. How about you?
I'm good.
So, a question for the USC fan, real quick.
Yeah.
Are you firm on Caleb Williams winning the Heisman?
I'm kind of just projecting it. Do I know? Am I firm on it?
Yeah.
I would say if he didn't get it, I would say if he didn't get it, it would be probably it would be travesty. Who do you think we should get it over him?
Max Duggan.
He is weak.
Max Duggan.
Thanks for the analysis, Brian. Appreciate your time.
TCU's quarterback, Max Duggan. After today, I think he deserves it.
Yeah, 1 game is what you're gonna hang the Heisman on. I mean, I've watched him all season. I've seen him pick up some great 3rd downs, score some touchdowns and things. But would you really say that he's probably the most electric and best player in the country, better than Caleb Williams and what he's done this year? Better arm talent?
I wouldn't say better arm talent.
I mean, he might be faster than Caleb. I'll give you that. But do you think he break tackles like Caleb?
I don't know. I feel like Caleb Williams will win Heisman, but I think if he don't, it should be Max Duggan.
I think Max Duggan did a great job, and I agree. I think he's a close second. But I just don't think, and I would try to be as honestly objective as I can. The throws that Caleb Williams makes, there's only a couple guys in the whole country can make those throws.
Yeah.
The way he breaks tackles, especially in the pocket, steps up, the plays he makes on the run, that's just a special talent. I think Max Duggan is definitely one of the best players in the country. But I just think that from stats, I think they threw the stats. What they didn't show was they said, I think said the stat they threw up in the game was about how many touchdowns they contributed to running and passing. And they showed that Caleb just had a little bit more than him. But they didn't show the passing yards, right? Which I'm pretty sure that he's probably better. And just the number of plays. What do you think, Mark? Who do you have for the Heisman?
So about 3 weeks ago, I thought it was a crazy race. Like I thought Stroud, Hooker, Williams, Corum, all these guys were like, I'm going to have to sit down and like figure this out. But watching Caleb Williams against UCLA and Notre Dame convinced me that he was decisively my selection for the Heisman Trophy. And then taking into consideration what happened this weekend, that Max Duggan had closed the gap, but not in a large way. Let's say if Caleb Williams was a 90 out of 100 and Max Duggan was a 60 out of 100, that Max Duggan became a 75 or out of 100, that there was still a gap, and Caleb Williams was still, in my mind, the clear Heisman selection. Although I would say that watching Max Duggan today, had TCU won that game, not that he should be blamed for the loss in any such way, but of course that's going to add to the campaign. It's going to add to the argument that just the gutsy, remarkable performance he put on display with his team's season seemingly on the line, it actually wasn't because they're still going to make the playoffs, was pretty remarkable. And I was thinking he's probably swaying some voters today.
Yeah. Well, the gutsiness, I mean, I'm looking at Caleb Williams. What people don't realize is his offensive line, we have our left tackle who's possible All-American candidate, definitely first round. Well, either a first round draft pick or a high second round draft pick was out for the game. And he really on that 66-yard. I mean, I think we're forgetting that first quarter that Caleb Williams was having before he got hurt. USC was up 17-3. He made about 4 or 5 circus throws and he had that 66-yard run where he pulled his hamstring. And then he stayed in the game. Riley wanted to take him out. He refused to come out of the game, said, no, I'm going to finish it. And he kept them in that game. You know, he was playing on a bad leg, and you could see it the whole game. And he still came up with 2 or 3 great throws in that game, even when he was hurt. He even ran for a first down. When anybody that's ever like pulled a hamstring knows was like to even just have a pulled hamstring, let alone try to run on it. He picked up a first down. So I don't think Caleb hurt himself at all in the game on Friday. And I agree with you, Mark. You know, I think all season Duggan has been without you take Duggan or and I know it's not a most valuable player award, but if you take Duggan or Williams off either team, and they're not nearly where they are, they're not nearly the same team. And we saw with USC yesterday. USC, even when we've had injuries along the offensive line, and again, Rick and Tony and I were saying we're going to lose 4 games. You know how good Caleb Williams was? He willed those teams to win. Even when we were missing guys, and the guys were. You watched the Notre Dame game. Guys were coming straight through the line, and he was just making them miss. He almost didn't need an offensive line. He made all that happen on his own. So I don't know. He's just a special player. And it showed last night when we didn't have him do his theatrics with a patchwork offensive line when our center went down. Even then, because he was hurt, he just couldn't make it happen. But all throughout the year, he mitigated all those injuries. And that, to me, also shows you why he's a special player.
Here are the stats comparison right here. See Caleb Williams there at 66%, 4,000 yards plus, 4,075, 37 TDs passing, 4 picks, 372 rushing, 10 touchdowns. Compared to Max Duggan at 65.6, so basically the same. Now, Max Duggan, since nobody's updated today's game, I had to do the addition. So the completion percentage, I had to kind of just guesstimate how much a 50% day would have knocked him down. So he's about 800 yards shy in passing, about 750, 7 less touchdown passes, same number of interceptions, about 100 yards more rushing, and a couple more touchdown. No, 4 less touchdowns rushing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both worthy, but I'm just looking also the intangible. I mean, they're both amazing players. I watched a hell of a lot more of Caleb Williams, but I did watch a lot of TCU. And I'm just saying, in general, the stuff that I saw him do, especially with his arm, I don't think Duggan can. Would we agree on this panel that Duggan does not have the same arm as Caleb Williams?
I agree. After watching him overthrow so many open receivers today.
That's how I'm making the selection myself, though. I don't make it based on where I think they project as NFL players or anything.
No, nor do I. I mean, just in the game to help your team win in a situation, can he make those throws? And I think that Caleb can make them, whereas Duggan may struggle. But I'm not diminishing his play at all, you know, whatsoever. I think he's a great player. He's only a freshman, right?
No. He's been around a long time.
Is he?
I think junior. I think the junior or senior.
Oh, is he a junior? I thought
he's like a COVID extra years. He's been around since like 2018.
Oh no, I'm mixing him up with North Carolina.
Drake May.
Yeah. Sorry, my bad. Yeah. So I mean, that's the best thing about Caleb. He's gonna be around next year, so it's gonna be amazing.
Yeah, did y'all watch the TCU game today?
Pardon?
Did y'all watch the TCU game today?
Yeah. Yes. Great game.
Did y'all see how many, this is what I'm going back up to where you said Caleb Williams can't complete those passes. Did you see how many overthrown passes Max Duggan had? Like, he'd have a wide open receiver downfield and he would just overthrow him.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think he has the same arm talent. Yeah, I mean.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't.
No.
But he does, like Caleb, has that intangible. I've seen not just this game, but a million times in the season where it's 3rd and 8, the play breaks down, and he just, with his legs, he makes it happen. Where he scrambles out and finds somebody. So he's that guy that can extend plays and then also get the first down with his legs, which is invaluable to. Would they be they wouldn't be on this run right now without his intangibles.
Max Duggan has basically been the TCU starting quarterback since 2019, and up until this season, he's thrown 15 TDs, 10 picks, 10 TDs, 4 picks, 16 TDs, 6 picks. So this is a player that is just very mature. He's played a ton of football. He's worked hard to get better, maximize his skills, he's not in the talent pool of a Caleb Williams by any stretch. He's not going to be an NFL quarterback. He's going to be in the NFL. I would guarantee almost, I'm not going to guarantee it. I would project that he's going to be in the NFL and he's going to start a handful of games once in a while. He's going to be a backup. He's going to hold a clipboard. That's who he is. He's maximized his talent. It's remarkable. He had heart surgery. He's come through. It's a great story. But if you're comparing them as talents, it's not a comparison. And now I think the improvement is to his credit, but also Sonny Dykes is a mastermind offensive play caller and schemer. And now he's at TCU. Gary Patterson's a defensive guy. And that's been the big difference as well.
Yeah. And play calling. But I mean, we can say the same thing for Caleb, right? Would Caleb be the same guy without Lincoln Riley? So, I mean, I think I think Duggan is we never saw Williams without Riley, but we saw Duggan without the right play caller, and absolutely the right system, the right play caller, the right development, even in off season can make that huge difference that we saw in him this year.
Yeah, well, Preem Sports, he's become a very high grade rich man's Jake Rudock. He was Jake Rudock his previous 3 seasons. Now he's much beyond that. Max Duggan. Yeah. He's got 30 plus touchdown passes and 4 picks.
And I mean, beyond those 2, because I mean, there's some guys who were right in it, right? That just unfortunately got hurt. So that comes into it as well. Injuries have unfortunately shaped this high. That's why I think it's a runaway for Caleb. I think it'd be a lot closer if you had a healthy Corum, but I mean, I don't know. The season that Caleb's having and the way he's done it, well, who knows? Actually, we don't know, because if a healthy Corum had played or any list of guys, there are a lot of guys who went down this year with injuries. Given the race right now,
I do believe that no Heisman vote should be cast until the season's complete.
I do kind of see the reason to do it before the conference championship games, because all these guys aren't playing in it, where it actually would have hurt Caleb, but it could have helped Caleb. I don't know if it hurt him actually, but I mean, in situations where the guy it's not a guy's fault. He shouldn't be penalized because his team didn't make a conference championship game. And so if a guy gets to play an extra game on that big stage when no one else is watching but you, I don't know. It's kind of an unfair advantage.
It's an advantage. It's also could be a disadvantage, depending on how you play.
True. And in both cases, then I think it would be unfair going both different directions.
So if that's the case, then they need to make that a rule and then make it just a regular season award and say that these conference championships games don't count and make the ballots due before the games.
Well, we know college football and they like to keep everything loose.
So you've got
there's so much in.
Some people hold their vote, others don't.
Yeah. That's what makes for great arguments. All the inconsistencies throughout college football. A lot of it doesn't make sense. It's almost like it's intentional. So we sit on at night on YouTube talking about it.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Right, Solar. Anything else for us?
Yeah. So the college football playoffs come out tomorrow. The final rankings. Do you think TCU stays in the top 4?
Yes.
Yeah.
Even with them thinking like they'll be another Cincinnati and get blown out in the first round by either Georgia or Michigan.
I don't think they're a Cincinnati. I think they're
Did
better.
Cincinnati get selected?
No, but that was last year that they got selected and they got blown out in the first round.
Yeah, a lot of teams have gotten blown out. Do you want me to list them? Oklahoma, Ohio State, Clemson, Michigan State, Alabama, Clemson. Everybody's getting blown out practically at some point.
Okay, but what do you have the rankings at 1 to 4?
I believe it's going to be Georgia, Michigan, TCU, Ohio State. I might be wrong. I'm not in the committee, so they make their own selections, of course.
So you still have TCU at 3 instead of falling to 4?
I believe that's what's going to happen. I might be wrong. Again, I'm not selecting for the committee. You know, that's we're making guesses about what other people are going to select.
I have no. It's like you're saying, the committee's weird.
So what do you think? Do you have an opinion on what they're going to select?
As a Bama fan, I'm hoping they put Bama at 4, but if they don't, I think it'd be Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, TCU.
Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, TCU. Yeah, they could move. They could penalize TCU for that game, but an overtime game against the number 10 team in the country, having to play an extra game that Ohio State didn't play, I don't think they're going to make that move, especially since I don't think they want Ohio State and Michigan playing a semifinal game, but maybe they do. I don't know. That shouldn't factor into it, but we're all smart enough to know that they're looking at the matchups.
Yep. All right, that's everything I had.
All right, Solar. Appreciate you being here.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks.
Great show as always.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for jumping on. All right, folks. Well, we have left the link in the chat a few more times, and it appears as though nobody else is jumping on. I don't know that I have much more to say unless I'm asked questions. So we appreciate everybody being here. We were topping out at 600 plus strong. So thanks so much for being here, especially since we had post-game shows going on the Michigan channel and on the Clemson channel. So if you want to check those out, please get on over to the Michigan channel and the Clemson channel. And let's see who else played today. I guess that would have been it for the post-game shows here at the Voice of College Football. And as you can imagine, there are tons of topics and narratives to slice and dice and produce content on. So we will do exactly that, possibly on Deion Sanders going to Colorado, the college football playoff selection. I posted a video about an hour before I came on tonight after the games, after I heard Nick Saban and his speech, his plea for his team, and I get his points. Check out the video. But I had a response to Nick Saban, and there was probably only one point that I missed. Since I just listened to Nick Saban, I sat down and I made my response. I did forget one point. That is, since TCU played Texas and Alabama played Texas, it's intriguing to me that we do have one common opponent between Alabama and TCU. And it's not like Alabama just crushed this team and TCU struggled against them. No, Alabama played at Texas. TCU played at Texas. Quinn Ewers is the starting quarterback at Texas. TCU had to face Quinn Ewers. Alabama did not have to face Quinn Ewers after the first quarter because he left the game. And if you watch that game, you know that Quinn Ewers was playing remarkably well against Alabama. Hudson Card came into the game, was barely in the game, and he got hurt. And he was hobbling around. And if you've seen Hudson Card play, you know what kind of quarterback he is. He is a classic dual threat quarterback. Let me block some bots. There we go. Classic dual threat quarterback is Hudson Card. And YouTube is not letting me block the bot. So if I do have a mod in here, please do that. So anyway, yes, the common opponent talk. We will talk about the common opponent, Lemansky, because we're comparing teams. So do you understand that it's all comparison? These teams, when you're comparing TCU and Ohio State or TCU and Ohio State or whomever, actually, the common opponent is actually the most valid metric or the most valid comparison. Because otherwise, we're comparing Ohio State playing Maryland and Penn State and all these teams over here in the Big Ten, and TCU playing West Virginia and Iowa State and Texas and in this conference. Actually, the common opponent is the best barometer. Is it everything? Of course not. Different teams show up in different ways in different matchups at different times of the year, but it is the most valid comparison to make. I find it funny that people criticize looking at common opponents And then we have these arguments and these debates about all this other stuff, comparing what one team does on one part of the country over here, playing all these different teams, and then this other team. And we make all sorts of comparisons back and forth about those groups of games, but they have a common opponent. We don't talk about that and consider that invalid. Well, that's kind of moronic. So TCU, bottom line, played a more impressive game against Texas than Alabama did. That's all there is to it. That doesn't mean TCU is better than Alabama. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that's one indication. And TCU fared better against Texas than Alabama did. I watched both games. That's clear. Not by some wide margin. It's not like TCU beat them 50-0 and Alabama beat them 29-28. But TCU did play better against Alabama or against Texas than Alabama did. All right. Anything else? SEC football. Mark, you deserve a good night's sleep. I will take that good night's sleep. But I just wanted to be here. This is one of the big nights of the year. This is one of the best nights of the year. And I'm glad to hear from Lemansky that I have the best hand gestures in college football. It's difficult for me not to talk without using my hands. Sorry about that. Actually, being a sports anchor for 7 years of my life, I was able to do that. And this posture that I take right here, like with the arm here and the other arm, like I did that. Most newscasters sit like this, but I just have to sit like this. And I was able to control myself for 7 years at the desk, and I didn't do a whole lot of this. I pretty much just talked or read the teleprompter like this. But yeah, doing what I'm doing right now, there's a lot of this. Yeah. All right. We appreciate everybody being here at the Voice of College Football. Where are you going to be noon Eastern time on Sunday? That's only, it's almost 3 a.m, 9 hours from now. Are you going to be here with us? We're going to be watching the selection committee. And I wish that there was more drama, but there's not, so I can't control that. So we will have an argument between Ohio State at 3 and TCU at 4, or vice versa. We will have a debate over Alabama versus TCU and Ohio State and all of that. So that's about as well as we can do tomorrow, but we will watch it all together. And then, BW, that's good that you will be in church. Thank you so much for that. That's great. I've moved to a new area. I don't have a church. I will have one at some point. I do not have one now. I preach to my kids to get in church every week, but I will be there at some point. But we will finish out the college football season. And we will be here at noon Eastern time with all of you watching the college football playoff selections. And then throughout the day, I will produce videos on bowl matchups and everything else pertaining to college football. And I may have something to say about Deion Sanders in Colorado. So keep it locked in here at the Voice of College Football. I appreciate all the support, all the contributions, all the love. Thanks for being here. See you in 9 hours right here at the Voice of College Football.